Welcome to Sleep from History, where we drift back to the shadowy streets and drawing rooms of Georgian London. Tonight, you are not trudging through mud or dodging bayonets. You are reclining in a candlelit bedroom, wrapped in silk, your body as frail as porcelain. Outside horse hooves clatter on cobblestones, slick with rain, while inside the scent of coal smoke and lavender water lingers faintly in the air. You are pale, elegant, and delicate, the very image of fashionable fragility in an age where illness itself is a status symbol. But the truth is far darker. Behind closed shutters and whispered prescriptions lies a slow, silent descent, spoon by spoon, into an amber liquid that promises calm but delivers chains. Your doctor prescribes laudanum with a kind smile. Your husband offers a polite kiss at dinner, and society nods approvingly as your strength fades. Here's the reality check. You probably wouldn't last a week before we sink deeper into this opiate haze. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these sleepy journeys into history. And don't forget to drop your location and local time. In the comments, we're building a gentle map of listeners across the world. Now, let's drift together into the world of laudanum and loss-haunting, intoxicating, unforgettable evening what drapes itself across the Georgian streets like a heavy velvet curtain, softening the sharp outlines of brick terraces and wrought iron railings. Cobblestones gleam damp underfoot, reflecting the warm flicker of oil lamps set in ornate iron sconces. Through tall sash windows, yellow candlelight spills over the pavement, illuminating the occasional carriage that rattles past its wheels, sending a hollow echo between the narrow rows of townhouses. There is a richness to the air, a mix of coal smoke, damp stone, and lavender water, so distinct that a single breath could transport you to this exact street decades later. You live in one of these elegant, orderly homes, a narrow terrace with polished door knockers, pale shutters that never quite close against the draft, and a polished banister gleaming like honeyed wood. Within every detail suggests refinement. Delicate porcelain figurines stand in neat ranks on the mantel. Embroidered cushions are set with geometric precision, and a single harp rests in the drawing room, like a quiet memory of gentler evenings. This is a neighborhood of solicitors, physicians, and clerks of steady reputation. No laughter or music spills into the streets, only the measured click of carriage horses and the occasional rustle of skirts passing along the pavement. And yet beneath the calm order of this world, illness has been woven into the fabric of social grace. In Georgian society, a certain pallor is not merely tolerated, but admired as a sign of sensitivity and refinement. Delicate wrists, trembling fingers, and a quiet reserve are virtues whispered about approvingly over tea services of bone china. Ladies' faintness is not cause for alarm, but for gentle sympathy, and chronic weakness is considered almost fashionable, an aesthetic of fragility that speaks of class and cultivated leisure. This is the paradox of your life. The very exhaustion that pins you to the chaise is read as elegance by visiting acquaintances. Guests remark upon your composure rather than your pain. Your pale complexion is a compliment, not a symptom. Neighbors see tidy curtains, not the disarray of half-finished letters and discarded shawls that litter your writing desk. Georgian London itself reflects this contradiction, a city where public facades shimmer with respectability, even as alleys reek of sewage and tenements heave with poverty. But here in these genteel streets, even suffering is performed with decorum, and you, though young, have already perfected this performance. You sit near the fire, wrapped in a silk dressing gown, a fine lace fichu carefully pinned at your throat. The coal in the grate hisses faintly. A small clock ticks steadily on the mantel. Your illness is never named outright, only referred to as a touch of the nerves, or delicacy words that conceal more than they reveal. The truth is a fog even heavier than the one clinging to London's rooftops, a fog of indifference, dismissal, and polite avoidance. Yet the streets outside whisper of something else. When you stand at your window, you can see the faint glow of apothecaries still open late, their shelves lined with glass bottles and corked vials, gleaming like jewels under lamplight. Somewhere down the road, a carriage halts, and you catch a snatch of conversation, an accent from the countryside laughter that feels too carefree for this stiff part of town. The wind rattles your shutters, and you shiver though the fire is warm. London at this hour feels alive, almost watchful, as though the entire city holds its breath. You close the curtains with a practiced hand, smoothing the folds until no sliver of night peeks through. Behind you, your maid clears her throat softly, hesitant to disturb your reverie. She carries a warmed brick wrapped in flannel, her eyes fixed on the carpet as she sets it gently by your slippered feet. She is silent, like the house, like the street in itself, as though this whole world conspires to hush any sound that might disturb the illusion of serenity. But serenity is an illusion. The house, though polished, feels colder than it should. The silence has weight pressing in around you. Georgian London, for all its elegance, is a city that hides its shadows well. And those shadows have already begun to creep into your life, slowly, quietly, until even the warmth of the hearth feels like a performance meant for someone else. Morning light is soft in this house, filtered through thin curtains that do little to keep out the London fog. It isn't a warm light, it's pale and watery, like milk thinned with too much water. The clock in the hallway chimes the hour, though you no longer count time by its rings. Your day begins slowly, not because you are lazy, but because your body refuses swiftness. You linger in bed long past breakfast, wrapped in quilts, despite the steady fire burning below. Your maid moves quietly through the rooms, a slip of a girl barely 16, with hands red and chapped from endless scrubbing. She lights the grate in your chamber before dawn, kneeling, so the glow doesn't wake you. When she carries hot bricks, wrapped in flannel to warm your sheets, she never meets your eyes. Respect, fear, or training, you cannot tell which. In this house, words are rare, and silence feels like another piece of furniture carefully arranged. You are the wife of a solicitor, a respectable man, with ambitions that keep him away most days. He is not cruel. He is not tender, either. At dinner, he glances over the top of his newspaper and nods at your polite remarks. Sometimes, when he remembers, he presses his lips gently to your hand as though rehearsing a habit learned in better days. The two of you are a portrait of Georgian propriety, poised, composed, and utterly separate. Your own reflection has changed. The once bright eyes admired at soirees now seem dulled, ringed with shadows. Your hands tremble as you button your cuffs, and the music you once played so effortlessly on your harp now gathers dust, the strings sagging slightly in the damp. Invitations arrive and remain unanswered. Letters are started, but abandoned mid-sentence, your ink blotting into pale gray stains. You find yourself staring at a window pane. For long stretches, the patterns of condensation more interesting than conversation. Your neighbors whisper in careful tones. When they meet you on the street, delicate, they say. Still recovering, they murmur. Some shake their heads knowingly. Others pity you with a smile. They mean well, but their words land like crumbs on a cold plate, reminders that your grief is public property. You lost your baby, and though society grieves with you in theory, the expectation is clear. Keep your sadness polite. The physician has been visiting twice weekly since the birth, a man of calm demeanor and polished manners. He smells faintly of cloves, wears his spectacles low on his nose, and carries a leather bag that squeaks when he opens it. His questions are always the same, asked with a patience that feels like indifference. Do you sleep through the night? Have you taken nourishment? Any thoughts of an unnatural kind? You answer softly, obediently, not quite. Some, no. He nods, scribbles in his ledger, and instructs you to take more broth. Occasionally, he suggests remedies, a change of linens, a walk in the park, a course of leeches. You say yes to everything. There is a relief in surrendering to his authority even when his treatments bring no improvement. At least his presence means someone is watching. Still, the emptiness persists. It isn't sharp like a wound. It's more like fog, a heaviness that seeps into your chest, a hollowness behind your ribs. Words like ache or pressure don't fit. The sensation is quieter, less dramatic, and more insidious, a shadow that follows you from room to room. You've begun to think of it as part of you, like your heartbeat or your breath. The house itself seems to echo this state. The walls are freshly painted, the carpets well swept, but it all feels lifeless. The ticking of clocks, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of skirts, they've become the soundtrack of a life that is orderly yet empty. On days when you feel particularly hollow, you sit by the window and watch the fog curl down Bedford Row, blurring the silhouettes of passing carriages. Somewhere deep down you know this can't continue. No tonic of broth or polite visits will sweep this fog away. But Georgian society thrives on appearances. So you smooth your skirts, dab a little lavender water behind your ears, and rehearse your faint smile. You are not ill. You are delicate. And delicate women don't cry out for help. They fade gracefully into silence. The doctor arrives on a Tuesday afternoon, just as the fog thickens into something almost tangible. He enters with his usual brisk efficiency, his polished shoes clicking softly against the parquet floor. His manner is gentle but detached. He greets you with a nod rather than a smile, places his bag on the table, and begins his ritual of quiet observations. He taps your wrist, examines your eyes beneath the lamplight, and inquires about your sleep and appetite, though he expects your answers before you speak them. Today, however, there is a shift in his tone, a note of decision. You're not improving, he says softly, his pen scratching in his ledger. His voice carries no judgment, only a sense of inevitability. You've stopped hoping for reassurance. His calm demeanor is merely another layer of Georgian politeness. He pauses, then reaches into his leather bag. The sound of glass clinking gently against glass draws your attention. He withdraws a small, elegant bottle no larger than a perfume vial. The amber liquid within glimmers in the lamplight, like honey warmed by fire. He takes a strip of paper, writes your name in his careful hand, and marks it with the number 25. Folding it neatly, he tucks it under the string that seals the bottle's cork. This will help, he says simply, placing it in your hands. 25 drops taken sparingly. His tone is not commanding, Not even persuasive, merely factual, as though the cure is inevitable. The word sparingly lingers in the air, but there is no further warning, no explanation of what this tincture contains. Laudanum is no stranger to Georgian households. It is whispered of in drawing rooms and found in the cabinets of both the wealthy and the poor. It is a fashionable cure, exotic and slightly improper, yet respectable enough to be prescribed by men like him. The next morning, a boy in a soot-streaked apron delivers the bottle to your back door. He mutters the doctor's instructions, then vanishes into the fog, leaving behind the faint smell of wet coal. You hold the vial in your hand, feeling its weight, as though the glass holds more than medicine. It holds a promise. You uncork it carefully, and a faint aroma of wine and iron escapes, sharp, yet oddly sweet. The ritual is precise. You count 25 drops into a silver spoon, each bead catching the lamplight as it falls. The liquid stains the spoon, but leaves no trace when you mix it into your tea. You sip cautiously, the bitterness sharp on your tongue, followed by a cloying sweetness that lingers at the back of your throat. You wait. At first, nothing happens. The fire crackles softly. The ticking clock continues unbothered. But then a warmth begins to spread. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but gentle, like a shawl laid across your shoulders. The ache in your back dulls. The restless tremor in your fingers quiets. The fog in your mind softens, not disappearing, but becoming a mist instead of a storm. You exhale without meaning, to a sigh that feels like release. The world itself seems calmer. The cold tiles under your slippers feel less biting. The draft that creeps through the windows no longer chills you to the bone. You set the cup down and stare at your hands, surprised to see them so steady. For the first time in weeks, you feel almost normal. Not joyful, not even content, just present. You tell no one. Not your husband, who kisses your hand distractedly at dinner, nor the maid who keeps her gaze firmly on the floorboards. This vial is your secret, a private luxury. Even its bitterness feels elegant, refined, like a fashionable suffering only you understand. The days that follow are easier. You take your drops with morning tea, and the heaviness that once wrapped itself around your shoulders like a leaden shawl seems lighter. Georgian London remains the same outside your window. The fog, the carriages, the endless politeness, but inside you have found a quiet companion. You think of it not as medicine, but as composure in a bottle. Of course, you tell yourself you will be careful. 25 drops, no more. Not yet. At first, your use of the doctor's tincture feels disciplined, almost virtuous. Each morning you measure out the prescribed 25 drops with the care of a jeweler counting precious stones. You add them to your tea stir until the amber threads vanish into pale liquid, and sip slowly, savoring the faint metallic sweetness. There is satisfaction in your restraint. Georgian society prizes control, and you imagine yourself a model patient, graceful in illness, refined in recovery. Yet the days stretch long and quiet. The house is immaculate, but sterile. Your husband departs for work early and returns late, absorbed in papers and obligations. Your maid treads silently through hallways, speaking only when addressed. Most hours are spent in solitude, watching shadows lengthen across wallpaper patterned with faded ivy. And though the tincture soothes your trembling fingers and dulls the pain in your back, its relief is not quite enough to banish the heaviness that clings to you. One afternoon, while dressing, you notice your hands trembling again. more than usual. You set your teacup down, spilling a drop on the linen tablecloth, and retrieve the vial. The cork is slick with condensation from your fingertips. You pour 25 drops as always, but something in you hesitates. Perhaps you reason the weather has worsened. The fog feels heavier today, pressing against the windows like up wool. Perhaps your nerves are usually frayed. A few more drops might be wise, just a cushion, not indulgence. You add 5 more, 30 in total. The change is subtle but noticeable. The ache in your temples eases more quickly. The knot in your chest loosens. A faint calm spreads through your limbs like ripples across still water. That night, your husband remarks on your color. "You're looking well," he says absently, folding his paper. The compliment warms you almost as much as the medicine itself. Soon 30 drops become your standard dose. You stop counting so precisely. The spoon fills a little higher, your hand steadier with familiarity. On days when the headaches throb behind your eyes, or the wind rattles the shutters, too violently you add a few more drops. 40 seems reasonable, necessary even. You tell yourself, this is not indulgence, only adjustment, the way one might tighten a shawl or lace a corset more firmly. By the end of the week, the bottle feels lighter. You hold it up to the light, curious rather than alarmed, watching the viscous amber liquid slosh lazily against the glass. The apothecary boy will come again soon, you know, and the bottle will be replenished. There is a quiet comfort in this predictability, a rhythm of delivery and consumption as routine as the ticking clock on the mantel. Outside, Georgian London continues its polished performance. Wealthy ladies in powdered wigs glide through the streets in lacquered carriages. Footmen carry parcels from milliners' shops, bowing politely as they pass. Tea is poured, fans flutter, and gossip swirls in drawing rooms, perfumed with rosewater. But within your home time feels suspended, softened by the tincture's haze. Days bleed into each other, not unpleasantly, but indistinctly, as though someone has drawn a fine lace veil over your memory. There is a peculiar beauty to this world of softened edges. The sound of carriage wheels grows distant like waves on a far-off shore. The fire's warmth feels deeper, almost dreamlike. Even your grief over the child you lost is dulled, not erased, but muted like a painting left too long in sunlight. You begin to understand why laudanum is spoken of with both reverence and scandal, why poets whisper of its gifts even as doctors prescribe it with caution. It is both cure and comfort, elegance and escape. The thought that you might depend on it never crosses your mind. Dependence is a vulgar word whispered about opium dens in the East End, not the drawing rooms of Bedford Row. What you have is refinement discipline, and a bottle of amber salvation delivered weekly to your door. For now, you are composed. For now, you are in control, but the fog outside your window thickens with each passing night, and already you sense it creeping into your veins. The bottle becomes part of the furniture, as natural as the ticking clock, or the folded linens stacked neatly on your nightstand. You no longer regard it with the curiosity you once had. Its presence is reassuring, like a loyal servant who expects nothing in return. The ritual of counting drops becomes almost meditative. 30, 35, 40. Sometimes you pause halfway, watching the liquid drip with slow precision into your spoon, the golden surface trembling like a miniature mirror. And yet your hands shake more often now, not violently, but enough to make buttons slip from your grasp. Letters are left half-finished, your neat script wavering into uneven lines. The housemaid notices your hesitation when dressing you, but she says nothing. Georgian London thrives on silence, and silence has become your armor. Days blur into one another. You remember certain things, your husband's voice, reading aloud from his paper, the rustle of skirts as visitors come and go, but other memories dissolve. Did the doctor visit yesterday or last week? You recall his spectacles glinting in the lamplight, his soft cough, the smell of cloves. But the conversations have become a haze, like dreams fading at dawn. Sometimes you find yourself standing in a room without knowing why, your fingers tracing patterns into the polished wood of the mantel, while your mind drifts like fog over the Thames. The tincture, once a savior, is now a constant hum in your veins. The warmth it provides is no longer a gentle relief, but a necessity. Without it, your body feels brittle, as though your bones might splinter under their own weight. Even sunlight seems heavier when you delay your morning dose, pressing against your eyelids until your vision swims. By mid-morning, the haze returns with each sip of laudanum-laced tea, and the day becomes bearable again. Your husband has noticed changes, though he does not comment. He glances at you over his spectacles, eyebrows faintly furrowed, but says nothing. It is easier for him to believe you are still delicate, still recovering from grief, than to question the bottles arriving discreetly at the tradesman's entrance. He leaves 2 sovereigns for you every Thursday, folded neatly in paper and slipped into your drawer. You thank him when you remember, in society's eyes, nothing is amiss. You are still polite, still composed when visitors call. Your home is well kept. Your gowns are pressed and trimmed with modest lace. You speak softly, smile faintly, and excuse yourself early when fatigue overtakes you. Georgian London has no shortage of fragile women, and your pallor only adds to your mystique. Even your absence at social gatherings draws sympathy rather than suspicion. But inside, the quiet has become oppressive. The shutters rattle in a wind that seems to visit only your street, whispering against the glass, like a reminder of something you've forgotten. On certain afternoons, you sit by the window for hours, watching the fog curl over Bedford Row like a slow-moving tide. Carriages come and go. Shopkeepers pull in their signs, but your world is still sealed off behind velvet drapes. Sometimes you imagine the city without you, a bustling network of drawing rooms, theaters, and parks, all vibrant and alive. It's hard to reconcile that image with your own small existence, confined to a single chair, a single vial, and a carefully maintained illusion of health. Your maid hovers in doorway, now glancing at you with something like worry. She has learned to read the signs, your slightly too bright eyes. After a dose, the tremor in your hands. When you wait too long, the way you grip the arm of the chaise, as though it anchors you. But she says nothing. In this house, silence is safety. You tell yourself you are managing well, that your life is calm, orderly, respectable. But in rare, fleeting moments, when the laudanum bottle tilts in your hand, and you catch your reflection in its curved glass, you sense the truth. You are adrift, and the calm you've created is only a veneer stretched thin over something darker. Outside, the fog deepens. Inside, your thoughts feel just as dense, curling in upon themselves, until you no longer know if you are soothing your pain or numbing your soul. The change is gradual at first, so gradual you convince yourself it isn't there. A dull ache creeps into your jaw, not enough to keep you from eating, but persistent enough that every bite of bread feels heavy. You try rinses of warm water and cloves remedies whispered by the maid, But the throbbing lingers, a quiet drumbeat beneath your days. Your eyesight falters next. Words on a page blur and tremble, and candlelight seems harsher than before. You polish your spectacles again and again, blaming dust, blaming smudges, anything but yourself. And still you pour the drops. 40 is now your minimum. 50 on colder mornings. 60 when the headaches feel like a fist tightening at the base of your skull. The difference between doses is no longer remarkable. The warmth comes slower, thinner, forcing you to chase the calm you once reached so easily. Each refill from the apothecary boy feels like salvation, but you've stopped counting how quickly the bottles empty. Your body whispers, in other ways too, hands that cramp unexpectedly, muscles that tremble when you reach for the kettle, a sweat that slicks your temples, though the room is cold. You brush these things aside, reassuring yourself that it's only the weather, or fatigue, or grief that lingers stubbornly in your bones. After all, isn't grief supposed to feel heavy? Isn't delicacy meant to show itself in pallor and faintness? Society offers you cover for every symptom. No one questions the bottle on your nightstand. Laudanum is respectable, almost fashionable. Ladies and gentlemen alike use it for headaches, melancholy, or sleeplessness. It's the tincture of poets and philosophers, a civilized answer to suffering. In this polished Georgian world, dependency hides in plain sight, masked by etiquette and embossed prescription labels. Your husband does not speak of it. He places his allowance in the same drawer each Thursday without comment. He sees the shadows under your eyes, but does not ask. Perhaps he thinks he is being kind. Perhaps it is easier for him not to look closely, and so you live behind a curtain of politeness, each exchange as carefully measured as the drops in your spoon. The maid has grown watchful. She notices how you sit at the edge of your bed, longer each morning, fingers trembling as you pour from the vial. She sees the way your breath catches when you rise too quickly, but she says nothing, trained as she is to keep her head bowed and her voice low. In this house, silence is both protection and prison. Some mornings, when the sunlight streams too brightly through the window, the world tilts unexpectedly. You steady yourself against the wall, heart hammering, and wait for the haze to settle. There are moments you forget what day it is, entirely drifting through the rooms, like a ghost haunting her own life. You pass the mirror and barely recognize the woman looking back. Skin drawn, thin hair pinned neatly, but lacking its former luster, eyes that flicker with something sharp and desperate beneath their calm surface. And still you maintain appearances. Visitors see only the elegant woman in lace and silk hands, folded neatly in her lap. They comment on your composure, your grace, the quiet courage you show in your illness. You smile softly, say little, and excuse yourself early, retreating to your sanctuary of darkened rooms and amber medicine. The house itself seems to share your decline. The polished furniture has lost some of its shine. Curtains hang heavy, trapping stale air, scented faintly with coal smoke and lavender water. Even the ticking clocks sound tired, their steady rhythm, like a lullaby meant to soothe a restless child. And through it all, you tell yourself you are in control. You measure your drops. You follow the doctor's orders. You manage your days with dignity. But deep down, you know the truth. This bottle no longer feels like a treatment. It feels like a tether. Without it, the world becomes sharp and unbearable. With it, everything softens into a haze that feels too much like relief to question. Outside Bedford Row remains calm and orderly. Carriages roll by, lamps are lit, and London continues its polished performance. But inside this house, your body is whispering warnings, and if you listen closely, you can hear the whisper turning into a plea. Your life has become a performance, a carefully choreographed ballet of politeness and propriety. You wake late, dress slowly, and descend the stairs with measured grace, as though each movement is part of a ritual designed to reassure the world that all is well. Your hair is brushed until it shines, your gowns pressed, your slippers polished. To anyone peering in through the tall sash windows, you are the perfect Georgian lady, serene, delicate, and quietly beautiful. The truth is written in smaller, subtler veils, the faint tremor of your fingers as you pour tea, the tightness around your mouth when you greet your husband in the evening, the hesitation in your step when sunlight hits you too sharply. The servants see it, of course. They always do. But the culture of Georgian London prizes discretion above all else, and so they bow their heads and say nothing, their silence as much a part of your home as the ticking of the mantel clock. Each week, the apothecary boy delivers another vial to the back door. He is young, soot-stained, his face ruddy from long walks through London's damp streets. He doesn't meet your eyes when he hands the parcel to the maid. He bows slightly, mutters something about the weather, and vanishes into the fog. The exchange is so discreet, it feels almost sacred. You rarely even think of payment. The coins appear in your drawer, the medicine arrives, and life continues in its strange, quiet rhythm. You've learned to time your doses with precision, a spoonful in the morning to ease your waking aches, another by early afternoon to keep the haze steady, a third only if needed when guests arrive, or your husband expects conversation. You are proud of your discipline, proud that even in your fragility you remain dignified. You've convinced yourself this is control, though you've long since stopped counting the drops. Outside Bedford Row is immaculate. Street sweepers clear debris from the gutters, and carriages roll past with a rhythmic clatter, their horses steaming in the cold. Gentlemen in powdered wigs stride purposefully to court, while women glide along the pavement skirts, lifted carefully from the damp. It's a neighborhood designed for appearances, a place where disorder feels like a distant rumor. But the air carries secrets, sicknesses, scandals, debts, and yours is one of them, hidden in plain sight behind lace curtains. The house itself seems to be shrinking around you. Rooms you once used parlor, music room, dining hall are now only visited when propriety demands. You've narrowed your existence to 2 or 3 familiar spaces. The bedroom where your maid lights the fire at dawn, the drawing room where you sit with folded hands and read the same page of a novel over and over, and the hall where deliveries are left quietly at the tradesman's entrance. Even the garden feels foreign, an untended patch of earth glimpsed through a window rather than walked upon. Still, society sees you as graceful, not ill. Illness is a curious social currency in Georgian England. Melancholy and delicacy are admired in women of status, symbols of refinement rather than weakness. A faint pallor, a gentle reserve, a tendency to withdraw from gatherings. All these traits make you seem more elegant, not less. You hear whispers of sympathy from visitors. She's still recovering. She's terribly delicate. Poor thing. But their pity feels like admiration wrapped in mourning silk. Inside, your thoughts feel slow, syrupy, as if laudanum has rewired the very pace of your mind. You're no longer sure which days are Sundays or when the doctor last visited. The sound of carriage wheels outside fades into something like the sea, a distant murmur that lulls you to sleep at odd hours. You wake sometimes with a half-empty cup on your lap, the taste of bitterness lingering on your tongue, and you can't recall pouring it. Yet nothing about your world appears alarming. You are still composed, still poised, still perfectly respectable. The laudanum has done more than ease your pain. It has preserved your mask. Beneath the silks and lace, decay has begun its quiet work, but no one sees it. In Georgian London, appearances are everything, and you are a masterpiece of concealment. The doorbell rings faintly in the distance. A visitor has arrived, or perhaps it's only another delivery. You straighten your gown, smooth your hair, and rise carefully from your chair. Your reflection in the mirror looks calm, serene, almost angelic. The truth of your dependence, your slow unraveling, is invisible to all but you, and so you step forward to greet the world, a woman painted in poise, hiding the first cracks beneath a layer of grace. In Georgian London, medicine is not confined to dark apothecaries or rural herb gardens. It is a polished part of domestic life, arranged neatly in glass cabinets and decorative drawers. Laudanum, the tincture now shaping your days, is no crude concoction, but a fashionable staple. Its amber hue gleams in sunlight like imported sherry. Its cork is sealed with care, and its label bears your name in elegant handwriting. In polite society, the presence of such a bottle is a mark of refinement, not disgrace. You have begun to notice its prevalence everywhere. At tea, a visiting neighbor discreetly adds a drop or two to her cup, claiming nerves brought on by poor weather. In drawing rooms, whispers of melancholia are accompanied by murmurs of tincture strength and preferred apothecaries. Even men of stature, judges, physicians, clergymen, use laudanum without shame, citing sleeplessness or digestive troubles. It is a fashionable solution for a fashionable issue. The Georgian world itself is a paradox of elegance and suffering. Streets gleam with carriages and polished boots, but poverty festers in alleys just beyond your view. Women are praised for pale skin and delicate health, their fragility considered alluring. Doctors' visits are part of the ritual of high society, and their tools, leech jars, silver lancets, and bottles of opium-laced tincture, are as familiar as the tea service. In this environment, your dependence is invisible, hidden beneath the language of propriety. You have learned to time your doses with social precision. Before a visitor arrives, you measure your spoon carefully, ensuring your hands remain steady and your conversation flows easily. At dinner, you maintain a soft glow of calm, your mind cushioned against the heavy topics your husband discusses with his colleagues. Evenings, when the quiet of the house feels oppressive, you allow yourself an extra drop or two, turning silence into something tolerable, almost pleasant. It feels less like medication and more like a secret ritual, a private ceremony no one dares question. The doctor continues to visit, polite as ever, tapping your wrist and murmuring encouragements. He adjusts your prescription without comment, replacing one vial with another, the numbers on the label increasing so subtly that you hardly notice. His visits are brief, his tone gentle, his judgment absent. In this world, pain is expected to be endured quietly, and laudanum is simply the most elegant method of endurance. But as the weeks pass, you feel its presence in ways you cannot ignore. The fog in your mind has become familiar, a comfort rather than a warning. You move through rooms with a strange detachment, as though life is a play and you are both actor and audience. Colors seem softer, sounds more distant. Even grief feels muted. The memory of your lost child no longer strikes like a blade, but rests like a faded photograph, blurred at the edges. Your reflection in the mirror is unchanged, or so it seems. You still wear silk gowns, your hair styled in glossy curls. Yet your cheeks have thinned, and a faint shadow lingers beneath your eyes. You notice these things in passing, but they feel irrelevant details belonging to someone else's life. What matters is the small vial on your table, the neat cork stopper that promises peace in a world that demands composure. Society does not see addiction, it sees refinement. Ladies exchange recipes for tinctures as they do for puddings, and apothecaries are as busy as milliners. There is no shame in your habit because no one calls it a habit. Laudanum is not yet whispered about in scandal. It is spoken of with sophistication, a sign of one's awareness of modern medicine. And so you continue unquestioned, respected and admired, even as your world narrows to a few rooms and a single bottle. You find yourself watching the apothecary boy when he delivers your order. He bows, deposits the parcel, and vanishes, leaving behind the faint scent of rain and soot. You wonder if he knows, if he can sense that you wait for him each week with something close to anticipation. But he never meets your gaze, and the exchange remains silent, sacred, unchanged. You close the door behind him, vial in hand, and retreat to your sanctuary of curtains and firelight. Outside London hums with life, but here, in this private world of lace and shadows, you are content to drift further into the amber haze that no one questions. Laudanum is not a secret in Georgian London. It is a fashion, a whisper on every polished street and in every candlelit salon. The bottle that sits on your nightstand is not a shameful possession, but a symbol of refinement, a modern marvel of medicine. Apothecaries market it with pride. Tinctura opii infused with clove, cinnamon saffron, or rose water, a concoction of exotic ingredients from across the empire. Its amber glow evokes sophistication, a promise that pain and sleeplessness can be subdued by elegance, not brute force. You've seen laudanum before in the homes of your acquaintances. The wife of a barrister confides over tea that she takes a little something before church to keep her nerves steady. A friend of your husband's recommends it for his gout. Even fashionable writers, whose works are discussed in literary circles, speak openly of opium tinctures in their diaries, praising its ability to spark inspiration and blunt melancholy. To partake is not scandalous. It is civilized. In this city of contrasts, that civility matters. London is alive with contradictions. Carriages, gleaming with gold trim, pass ragged beggars on rain-soaked cobblestones. Perfumed ladies step over open gutters, carrying the stench of waste. Public health is rudimentary at best. Disease thrives, and infant mortality is so common that mourning clothes are a standard expense for families of every class. Doctors prescribe bleeding, leeching, and blistering to cure ailments they scarcely understand. Against that backdrop, laudanum feels like a miracle, a few drops of amber liquid replacing lancets and purges with something gentler, almost luxurious. The bottle itself is treated with reverence in your home. It rests in a cabinet lined with velvet, beside jars of rosewater and silver pillboxes. The cork is replaced carefully after each use. The spoon is polished until it gleams. When the maid washes it, she does so with the same care she gives to your jewelry. This is medicine, yes, but also ritual, and rituals have power, and yet laudanum is more than a cure. It is an invitation to drift. The first few doses brought relief. Now they bring something richer, a softening of sharp edges, a gentle fog that turns your narrow home into a sanctuary. The firelight glows warmer. The ticking of clocks becomes a lullaby. Even loneliness feels less like a wound and more like a familiar companion. Nights once spent staring into darkness are now softened by a haze that carries you into sleep. The doctor approves of your progress. He notes your steady pulse, your quiet demeanor, and he leaves each visit satisfied. He does not see the subtle shifts in your world, the way the hours between doses stretch long and brittle, the faint flutter of panic when the bottle feels lighter than expected. Nor does he ask about the missing meals, the weight slipping from your frame, or the new shadows beneath your eyes. He has other patients, other houses to visit, and besides, you are not bedridden. You are not screaming in pain. You are composed. In this society, that is enough. Georgian London rewards composure. Your neighbors passing your shuttered windows speak kindly of your fragility. Poor thing, they say. She has never quite recovered. There is admiration in their voices, though they would not admit it. A delicate woman is a romantic figure. Your grief and suffering, carefully hidden behind silk curtains, elevate you in their eyes. Laudanum has become part of that narrative, a prop in the story of your elegant fragility. And so, every week the apothecary boy arrives and the cycle continues. You greet him with a faint nod, accept the brown paper parcel, and retreat indoors. The bottle glints in the firelight like captured sunlight. You measure your drops, stir them into your tea, and let the world slip a little further away. Outside London is a city of noise and grit. Market cries echo through alleys. Chimneys belch smoke, and wheels grind against wet stone. But here, in your dimly lit parlor, time has slowed to a gentle crawl. You are no longer a grieving wife, or a woman weakened by illness. You are an observer, drifting above your own life, untouchable and serene. Laudanum has given you this illusion of control, this elegance of suffering. You have not yet realized that it has also laid its chains quietly around your wrists. At first, laudanum is an accessory to your day, a graceful indulgence that softens the harsh edges of life. But as weeks pass, you notice something subtle. Time itself is bending around the vial. Your mornings are no longer measured by the toll of the church bell or the creak of carriage wheels on wet cobblestones, but by the ritual of counting drops. 30, 35, 40. The spoon trembles slightly in your hand, and you steady it against the rim of the teacup, watching the amber beads fall one by one. The relief comes quickly, so quickly, that you begin to anticipate it before the first sip touches your lips. The fog that fills your mind is no longer just a comfort. It is a shield, a barrier between you and the jaggedness of the world. You find yourself waking earlier just to shorten the hours of waiting. The doctor does not question the frequency of refills. His ledger is filled with names, each representing a household like yours, a woman described as delicate, a gentleman plagued by nerves, a child who does not sleep. Laudanum is prescribed freely, almost generously, its dangers hidden beneath Latin phrases and handwritten labels. You are not his only patient, not his only quiet sufferer, and your case seems to him well in hand. He praises your composure, notes your stable pulse, and leaves with a polite bow. But beneath that composure, something is shifting. You begin to resent interruptions. The maid's hesitant knock, your husband's evening conversation, even the sound of distant traffic from the street. All of it feels intrusive, dragging you back from the soft edges of your private haze. Meals become an afterthought. The taste of bread and butter feels muted, distant. The only taste you truly notice anymore is that bittersweet drop on your tongue. You start rationing your bottles more carefully, not because you wish to cut back, but because running out is unthinkable. The thought of a day without the tincture makes your chest tighten. You place the bottle in a drawer lined with linen locket and tuck the key into your gown pocket, though you live alone with a maid, too frightened to touch anything without permission. The act of locking it is symbolic. It makes you feel in control even as you find yourself unlocking it 3, sometimes 4 times before sunset. Outside your home, Georgian London bustles on, indifferent to your slow retreat. Newsboys cry the headlines about Parliament and trade. Chimneys send black smoke curling into the gray sky. The city is alive, vibrant, and noisy, but you have become a shadow of yourself, existing only within these 4 walls. On rare occasions, when you venture out, the world feels jarringly bright. Every sound too sharp, every scent too strong. The marketplace smells of fish and damp straw. A passing carriage splashes water on your hem, and you flinch at the shock. Your hands itch for the calm weight of the bottle waiting at home. At dinner, your husband speaks of legal matters and politics, his voice steady and confident. You nod politely, respond when necessary, and sip your wine with hands that no longer tremble. He does not know that your calm is manufactured, your serenity, bought by the amber liquid he assumes is merely a tonic. He thinks your fragility is improving. You let him believe it. It is easier this way, but there are signs even you cannot ignore. Some mornings, you wake with your head heavy, the taste of bitterness still lingering on your tongue, though you cannot recall when you last dosed yourself. The mirror shows a face that is thinner than you remember. Your eyes have lost their luster, dulled by exhaustion, and something else you don't want to name. The laudanum's comfort is no longer soft. It is heavy, pressing against your chest, like a familiar weight you dare not put down. You tell yourself this is temporary, that you are still in control, that one day when your health improves, you'll reduce the dosage, pour fewer drops, and regain the life you once knew. But even as you make these promises, your hand drifts unconsciously to the locked drawer, tracing the outline of the key through the fabric of your gown. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, a sound that has become your constant companion. Inside, you count the hours, not by clocks, but by the soft clink of glass and the sweet bitter kiss of oblivion. The cost of your amber comfort is measured not only in drops, but in coins. At first, the weekly deliveries are a trivial expense, hardly worth a mention. Your husband provides your allowance without question, 2 sovereigns wrapped in paper, placed discreetly in your drawer every Thursday morning. It is enough for ribbons, sewing supplies, or a new pair of gloves, and of course the medicine. But the bottles seem to empty faster now. The apothecary boy arrives more frequently, his soft knock at the tradesman's entrance as regular as the tolling of the church bells. He never speaks more than a polite greeting. His hands smell faintly of smoke and rain. You begin to watch for him at the window relief stirring in your chest. at the sight of his cap bobbing along the cobblestones. It feels shameful somehow to anticipate him this way, like a child waiting for sweets. Yet you cannot deny the comfort of that familiar brown paper parcel. Your husband notices nothing, or perhaps he chooses not to. His world is one of ledgers and clients, courtrooms and contracts. He kisses your hand politely at dinner, his conversation measured and respectable. He does not ask how many bottles arrive each week, nor does he ever look too closely at the receipts tucked discreetly into a drawer. This silence feels like kindness at first, then like indifference. Either way, it protects you. Still, the expense begins to nibble at the edges of your life. You forgo the lace trim you admired in a shop window. You delay calling the laundress for another week, claiming fatigue. You quietly dismiss the maid one afternoon, sending her to her family for a short visit, not out of generosity, but to save the cost of her wages for a day. The house feels heavier in her absence, the silence thick as the fog curling outside. One rainy evening, you unlock a small velvet-lined box and remove a brooch, a modest piece of jewelry, but sentimental, a gift from your late mother. You wrap it carefully in soft paper and place it in your reticule. The next morning, you make your way to a narrow street near Theobald's Road, where pawnbrokers' windows glint with tarnished silver and second-hand watches. The man behind the counter takes your brooch with little comment, counting out coins into your palm. You tell yourself it's only temporary, that you'll reclaim it when your health improves. But deep down, you know it may never return. Returning home, you find the apothecary boy already waiting at your door. He hands you a fresh parcel, bows, and disappears into the mist. The exchange is wordless, efficient, and oddly intimate. As you close the door behind you, you feel the weight of the new vial in your hand and the absence of the brooch in your pocket. The house has become a stage set for your performance of health. The curtains are always drawn just so, the silver polished, the flowers refreshed weekly. Visitors still call occasionally, offering sympathy and gossip in equal measure. You sit among them, your hands folded neatly in your lap, your smile soft and tired. They speak of your courage, your quiet grace. None suspect that behind the locked drawer in your bedroom lies a growing dependency that has become the center of your life. When you are alone, you drift through your home like a ghost. Rooms that were once lively now feel like hollow shells. The music room, once filled with your harp's gentle notes, is silent. The parlor is tidy, but lifeless, a place for appearances rather than living. Even your own reflection seems distant, your face thinner, paler, but still composed, as if someone has painted over your features with a delicate porcelain glaze. You remind yourself that laudanum is respectable, even fashionable. You remind yourself that ladies of refinement all over London rely on it. You are not reckless. You are not shameful. You are simply delicate. These thoughts soothe you like the medicine itself, quieting the faint voice in the back of your mind that whispers of chains. Outside, the rain falls steadily, slicking the cobblestones in silver. Inside, you measure another spoonful, the clink of glass echoing softly through the empty house. Your body begins to betray you in small, almost imperceptible ways. At first, it's a faint fluttering in your hands, a tremor that makes you fumble with buttons and spill tea on the lace tablecloth. You laugh it off when the maid notices, blaming fatigue, blaming the cold. But the tremor worsens. Some mornings, it takes all your concentration to steady your hand long enough to measure the drops. You pause between each one, forcing calm into your breath, determined to appear composed when your husband arrives home. Your mind, once sharp and quick, feels dulled like a mirror fogged with condensation. Memories slip through your fingers like water. A letter you were meant to write a neighbor's name the exact time of the doctor's last visit. When visitors call you, sometimes forget what day it is. You smile faintly, murmur polite responses, and they leave praising your courage, unaware of the growing fog behind your gaze. The laudanum dulls not only your pain, but your hunger. Meals are skipped portions, left untouched. Your gowns hang looser now, the silk whispering against your thinning frame. Yet no one says a word. In this society, pallor and fragility are romanticized. A delicate woman is a figure of poetry, not a medical concern. When your husband looks at you across the dinner table, he sees refinement, not decline. His silence has become a kind of complicity, a tacit agreement that so long as you remain graceful, the truth need not be spoken. The house, once a source of comfort, now feels like a gilded cage. You avoid the music room altogether. The harp sits silent in the corner, its strings gathering dust. The drawing room feels oppressive, its polished furniture gleaming under lamplight, like a stage set for a play you no longer wish to perform. You find yourself retreating to your bedroom earlier each evening, where the fire glows softly and the bottle waits in its linen-lined drawer. Your reliance on the tincture has become a rhythm, as predictable as the clock's chime. Morning doses bleed into afternoon doses, and by evening you are steady enough to greet your husband with a serene smile. He does not notice the faint glaze in your eyes, or the way your fingers clutch the arm of your chair when conversation becomes too taxing. He prefers this calm version of you, a wife who listens, nods, and never complains. Perhaps he senses something amiss, but chooses not to see it. In Georgian London, silence is a form of courtesy. Sometimes when you catch your reflection in the mirror, you hardly recognize yourself. Your face is thinner, sharper at the cheekbones. Your lips are pale, your eyes shadowed, and yet there is still beauty there, preserved like a pressed flower. Laudanum has given you this stillness, this strange ethereal composure. You are both living and fading, a ghost in silk gowns. The doctor continues his visits, his questions unchanged. Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Any pain? You answer softly, yes, yes, no. He nods, scribbles a note, and assures you that you are improving. His confidence feels like a script he has read 100 times before. When he leaves you, exhale and unlock the drawer once more. There are moments when fear creeps in. It happens in flashes, a sharp pain in your ribs when you stand too quickly, a sudden pounding in your temples when you miss a dose. Once your hand shook so violently that the spoon clattered onto the tray, splattering the amber liquid across your gown. The maid rushed in, startled, but you waved her away with a weak smile. You wiped the stains carefully, dabbing at them, until no trace remained. The incident is already fading from your memory, like so many other things. London continues to hum beyond your shuttered windows. Carriages rattle over cobblestones. Church bells toll in the distance. Street vendors shout about fresh bread and fish. Life goes on vibrant and chaotic, while you drift further into quiet dependence. Your days softened into indistinct shapes. You are still elegant. You are still respected. but cracks are forming in the porcelain mask you've so carefully maintained. If anyone were to look closer than they dare, they would see a woman slipping quietly beneath the surface of her own life. The decline does not come all at once. It creeps in softly, like the fog that curls beneath the door. One morning, as you rise from bed, your knees buckle without warning, and you catch yourself on the bedpost, breath sharp in your throat. The room spins briefly before settling, but a cold sweat slicks your temples. You dismiss it as weakness from fasting, from grief, from anything but what it truly is. Soon there are other signs. The laudanum, once a balm, now feels necessary. Without it, your hands shake so badly you cannot lace your gown. Your maid notices, though she never speaks of it. Her glances linger a moment too long. As she fastens your stays, her lips pressed thin. She has begun lighting the fire earlier, her movements hushed and deliberate, as though afraid to disturb you. You can sense her pity, but it feels distant, unimportant. Your days are shrinking. You no longer walk in the square or ride through the park. Even stepping into the hallway feels like a journey. The rooms beyond your bedroom have become mere scenery, polished but lifeless. The parlor's embroidered cushions, the gilt-framed paintings, the orderly shelves of books, none of them belong to you anymore. You exist within a smaller world now, a chair, a bed, a nightstand, and the precious vial within reach. Your husband, too, has withdrawn. He greets you with quiet courtesy, but the warmth has gone from his voice. He does not question the bottles. He does not question the weight loss, the pallor, the way your once bright eyes seem perpetually glazed. In Georgian London, illness is a private matter, a household's secret. His silence feels like a choice, whether out of mercy or shame you cannot tell. The doctor's visits have become perfunctory. He glances at your tongue, presses 2 fingers to your wrist, and nods. He speaks of delicate constitutions, of nervous temperaments, offering platitudes that are easier to digest than truth. When he writes your next prescription, his hand is steady, his voice calm. Laudanum is still a trusted medicine, and you are still a respectable patient. No one sees chains in a bottle so elegantly labeled. The line between relief and haze blurs more each day. Hours slip through your fingers unnoticed. Afternoons dissolve into evenings without memory of how you spent them. You wake from shallow naps, unsure of whether it is dawn or dusk. The mirror becomes a stranger's portrait, hollow cheeks, lips pale, and dry hair that no longer shines, even under candlelight. Yet the sight does not frighten you. It feels distant, as if you are observing yourself through a layer of glass. The house's silence deepens. Even the ticking clocks seem muffled, now their steady rhythm less a comfort than a reminder of time's slow passage. When carriages rattle down Bedford Row, their wheels sound far away, as though the city itself has retreated. You are becoming invisible, an ornament of morning silk, a whisper behind curtains. Guests no longer visit, not because they are unwelcome, but because they have quietly stopped asking. Your fragility has become an excuse, a polite barrier that allows you to disappear. Laudanum has given you that disappearance, a soft amber sanctuary, where the ache in your chest fades, where grief is dulled to a manageable hum. But its gift is double-edged. You have become less a participant in your own life and more a shadow drifting through rooms, scented faintly of smoke and lavender water. Even your maid moves around you, like a nurse tending to a wax figure. Her footsteps muffled, her eyes cast downward. You clutch the vial tightly, now fingers curled around its smooth glass, as though it is the only thing keeping you tethered to this world. Perhaps it is. Without it, the trembling, the sharp pain, the unbearable weight of consciousness return with a vengeance. With it, you are calm, poised, the perfect Georgian lady, even as your body begins to falter, even as your mind frays at the edges. Outside London remains relentless, alive with chatter and commerce. Inside, you are suspended in amber, frozen in a haze of civility and decay. The moment comes quietly, without drama, no fall, no gasp, no cry for help. It begins with a glance at the mirror. You are seated at your dressing table, the afternoon light weak and gray, filtered through thick curtains. The fire has burned low. The air smells faintly of damp coal and rose water. For a long moment, you study your reflection. The face staring back is familiar yet foreign. Your skin is pale, almost translucent, stretched over sharp cheekbones. A faint bruise-like shadow rings your eyes, and your lips are tinged with the blue-gray of winter frost. Your hair, once glossy and carefully curled, looks thin, its sheen dulled. You tilt your head slightly, and your reflection seems to tilt more slowly, as if reluctant to follow. The disconnect is subtle but unmistakable. You lower your gaze to your hands, resting in your lap. They are slender and elegant as always, but your fingers tremble softly as if moved by an invisible breeze. Your nails are brittle moons of pale white at their base. When you flex your hand, there is a stiffness in your joints, a reminder that your body is beginning to fray at its edges. The bottle sits open on the table, its cork discarded, the amber liquid glowing faintly in the dim light. You pour without counting, habit guiding your hand. The spoon trembles slightly as you lift it to your lips. The bitterness has become familiar, almost pleasant. You swallow quickly, chasing the warmth that will soon follow. This is no longer medicine. It is ritual survival and escape all at once. Your maid enters quietly, carrying a tray with untouched bread and lukewarm tea. She sets it down without comment, though her eyes flicker to the bottle. She sees more than she says, and that silent knowledge lingers between you like a ghost. You thank her softly, and she curtsies, retreating without another word. You do not touch the bread. Later, your husband comes home, his voice carrying from the hallway. He asks after your health, his tone polite but distant, as if reciting a script. You respond with the same soft phrases. Better, I think. Tired, but well enough. He nods, satisfied. He does not step closer, does not notice the shadow clinging to you like a second skin. In Georgian London, illness is a private theater and your performance is impeccable, but your body is no longer willing to play its role quietly. When you rise from your chair, the room lurches sideways. You clutch the edge of the table, heart-hammering breath shallow. The fire seems too bright, the ticking clock too loud, every detail of the room sharpened to a painful clarity. You close your eyes, willing the haze to return, and when it does, it is a relief so deep it makes you dizzy. You sit again, hands shaking, and glance at the mirror. The face staring back seems older than yours, as if years have passed in a matter of weeks. You trace a fingertip along your jaw, feeling the sharpness of bone beneath skin. For the first time, a thought creeps in, a thought you push away immediately. You are disappearing, but disappearing is easier than existing. Existing hurts. The memories of loss, the weight of grief, the relentless expectations of society, All are softened by this haze. You take another spoonful without hesitation. The night falls early, and with it a heavy quietness settles over the house. You do not light the lamps. You prefer the shadows now, the way they blur the edges of the room. Outside, carriage wheels clatter against wet cobblestones, distant and hollow. Inside, the ticking clock marks time's passage, steady and indifferent. When you finally rise to go to bed, your legs feel foreign, as if they belong to someone else. You move slowly through the house, hand trailing along the wall for balance. At the foot of the staircase, you pause, pressing a hand to your chest. Your heartbeat feels uneven, fluttering like a trapped bird. You close your eyes until it passes, and then you climb the stairs carefully, step by deliberate step, the house echoing with your silence. In your bedroom, the fire has gone out. You do not relight it. Instead, you sit on the edge of the bed, bottle in hand, staring at the empty hearth. The thought returns. You are disappearing, and for the first time, you do not fight it. Your world has narrowed to a handful of rooms, their familiar shapes now blurring together like scenery in a recurring dream. The bedroom, once a refuge, has become your anchor. The chaise in the parlor is a throne you rarely leave. The fire flickers faintly, but the warmth no longer reaches you as it once did. Even the sound of carriage wheels outside feels distant, muffled by the heavy drapes that block out the world. Once you looked forward to your husband's evening return, eager to hear his stories of clients and courtroom dramas, to feel some connection to life beyond these walls. Now, his presence feels like a disruption. His polite inquiries about your health are met with murmured assurances. Better today. Resting well. No pain. These lies are easier than explanations. You see the relief in his eyes when you answer softly. He wants a quiet house, a graceful wife, not the truth. The maid has become more than a servant. She is your shadow. She tends the fire, fetches tea, and folds your shawls with hands chapped by lye and cold water. She knows the location of every bottle and spoon, yet she never speaks of them. When her gaze lingers too long, you turn away, unwilling to see pity reflected back at you. Silence has become her act of loyalty. You have stopped playing the harp. Its strings, once a source of pride and elegance, are slack now, collecting dust. The music room, like the garden, is a distant memory. The garden especially haunts you, a walled patch of earth where you once gathered lavender and mint in the early mornings. Now, it exists only in glimpses, through a smudged window pane. The herbs long dead, the soil dark and neglected. You tell yourself you'll step outside when you're stronger, but the thought feels abstract, like a promise made to someone else. Time has become elastic. You wake not to the rhythm of clocks, but to the hollow pull of need. The first dose of the day is no longer about easing pain. It's about silencing the noise inside your chest, the trembling in your hands. Without it, the world becomes unbearable. Light feels sharp, sound abrasive. Even the rustle of your maid's skirts sets your teeth on edge. You've begun hiding empty bottles in the bottom drawer of your bureau. It started accidentally, a forgotten one pushed aside to make room for a new vial. Now, they clink softly against each other when you open the drawer, a secret chorus of glass that you cannot bring yourself to discard. Each empty bottle is a marker of time. A ghost of a day survived. Your husband hasn't noticed, or he has, and he chooses silence. That silence feels heavier now, as if it conceals an unspoken decision forming in his mind. He spends more evenings in his study, the scent of ink and tobacco drifting under the door, the sound of quills scratching long into the night. He no longer lingers in your bedroom doorway, no longer places a hand gently at your shoulder. You've become something to manage a fragile ornament in a home built for appearances. You move less and less. The hallways seem longer, the stairs steeper. Even bathing has become a ritual you approach with exhaustion. The water is lukewarm by the time you ease into it, and your maid's hands are oval but firm as she washes your hair. You close your eyes and imagine the lavender-scented baths of your youth before your body became something fragile and foreign. The house itself feels different, colder, more watchful. At night, when the wind rattles the shutters, you hear creaks in the floorboards that sound like footsteps, whispers in the silence that make your skin prickle. You tell yourself it's only the old timbers shifting in the cold, but your heart beats faster all the same. Laudanum has transformed your illness from agony into stillness, but it has also transformed your home into a cage. You are both prisoner and warden, locked in by velvet curtains and glass bottles, each spoonful tightening the bars just a little more. The first time you see something that isn't there, it feels almost like a dream. You are seated by the window at dusk, curtains half drawn, the fire burning low. The amber haze of laudanum softens every edge, the crack in the plaster above the mantel, the flickering lamplight, the soft pattern of rain streaking the glass. And then, just beyond the pane, you catch a shadow, someone standing in the garden. Your breath catches, but you do not cry out. The figure is still, impossibly still, as though carved from the fog itself. You blink once, twice, and it's gone. You laugh quietly, a soft, nervous sound, convincing yourself it was only the reflection of your own form in the window. Yet a chill lingers deep in your bones. These visions become more frequent. At night, the house seems to hum faintly, a low vibration in the walls you never noticed before. Shadows stretch unnaturally long at candlelight. The ticking of clocks seems louder, almost impatient. Once, as you reached for your bottle, you saw movement in the corner of the room. A woman in a plain gray dress, her face pale and indistinct. You froze, spoon poised mid-air. The figure tilted her head, watching you silent as a portrait. When you blinked, she was gone, leaving only the steady hiss of the fire and the bitter taste of laudanum on your tongue. You do not tell your husband. You do not tell the doctor. Some instinct warns you to guard these visions like a secret. Perhaps they are not hallucinations, but glimpses of something no one else can see, a thin layer of reality peeling away. Or perhaps they are a symptom of weakness, something that will make them look at you with pity instead of respect. In Georgian London, women are judged as much for composure as for health, and so you choose composure. The maid notices your unease, though she never says so. She moves with exaggerated quiet lighting lamps, earlier than usual, keeping fires high. When she enters your room, she glances over her shoulder, as though she too feels the weight of unseen eyes. One evening, you catch her crossing herself quickly before setting down your tea tray. You want to ask what she sees, but the words die in your throat. Sleep becomes treacherous. You wake often unsure if you've truly slept at all. In the dim hours before dawn, whispers seem to ripple through the wall, soft voices calling your name, or perhaps only the sigh of wind through the shutters. Once you wake to find someone sitting at the foot of your bed, a pale outline in the darkness. You gasp, fumbling for the lamp, but when light floods the room, There is only an indentation in the quilt, as if someone had just risen. The laudanum both soothes and intensifies these visions. Each spoonful dulls your fear, wrapping it in cotton wool, yet also deepens the strange, dreamlike quality of your world. Reality becomes fluid. A hallway stretches longer than you remember. A mirror shows a face that doesn't quite move in sync with yours. A shadow lingers a second too long. You begin to question which version of events is real, the one softened by laudanum's glow, or the one that pricks at your nerves like a cold draft. Outside London remains loud and bustling, but it feels impossibly far away. The laughter of children in the street, the call of vendors, the church bells, they reach your ears as if through water. The world beyond your curtains is alive, but you are drifting further from it, each day a ghost haunting your own home. Your husband's visits to your room are briefer now. He stands in the doorway, speaking softly about his work, but his words slide past you like fog. You nod when appropriate, smile faintly, and let him leave reassured that you are resting. When the door closes, you are alone again with the whispering silence. That night, as you prepare for bed, you glimpse movement in the mirror. A figure just behind you leans close enough to brush your shoulder. You whirl around, heart racing, but the room is empty. You stare at the reflection, your own wide eyes, pale skin, and nothing else. And yet you feel breath on your neck. The silence in your home has taken on a strange quality, heavier than before, as though every ticking clock and rustling curtain is watching you. The maid moves like a shadow, careful not to startle you, her hands folded as she waits for instructions you rarely give. She has learned to anticipate your needs. The vial is always within reach, the fire always burning just high enough to cast warmth, and the curtains drawn tight against the outside world. Her discretion has become a form of devotion, but it also feels like a mirror held to your own decline. She knows, though she will never say it aloud. Your husband visits less often, his excuses polite but perfunctory. There are court cases that demand his time, dinner invitations he cannot refuse, obligations that keep him away until late at night. When he does appear, he stands by the doorframe, his words clipped, his gaze flicking between your face and the fire. He kisses your forehead mechanically, a gesture more symbolic than affectionate. You cannot remember the last time he sat beside you, the last time you felt warmth that was not from laudanum or blankets. Letters arrive less frequently, too. Friends have stopped inquiring about your health. Neighbors no longer send invitations to musicales or dinner parties. You are a name mentioned in whispers, poor thing still unwell, and then forgotten, replaced by fresher gossip and newer scandals. Georgian society values appearances, and yours has been carefully maintained, but absence speaks louder than illness. The fewer rooms you inhabit, the easier it is for the world to forget you. Inside the house seems to be aging with you. Dust creeps into corners that the maid cannot reach. Rugs wear thin where no one treads. The walls, once bright with paint, feel dimmer, their colors muted by time and shadow. Even the scent of the air has changed, less lavender and beeswax, more smoke, and something faintly metallic. You light fewer candles at night, preferring darkness over the effort of illumination. The voices return soft and persistent. Sometimes they are only murmurs impossible to make out. Other times they whisper your name's syllables, drawn out like sighs. You press your hands over your ears, but the sound blooms inward, as if your own mind has become an echo chamber. The figures in the mirrors appear more often, now pale outlines that stand behind you, unmoving, their faces blurred like a painting left in the rain. They never speak, but their silence is heavier than any scream. You have stopped resisting the haze. Each dose of laudanum is measured with less precision, your trembling hands spilling a few drops onto the tablecloth, dark stains that the maid cleans without comment. You rarely taste your meals anymore. The bitterness of opium lingers on your tongue, overwhelming everything else. When you close your eyes, time collapses. Hours pass in what feels like moments, and days blur together in a steady rhythm of glass clinking against silver. Your husband has started speaking to the doctor in the hallway instead of your bedroom. You hear them sometimes through the closed door. Low voices, steady and firm, discussing you in a tone more suited to estate matters than human suffering. You are no longer part of the conversation about your own life. Decisions are made quietly, gently, as though you are too delicate to hear them. Perhaps you are. The maid has developed a habit of hovering near your door at night. You see her shadow beneath the crack, hear her footsteps pacing softly in the corridor. At first it annoyed you. Now you find it comforting, like a guard posted at your cell. Even she seems unsure of what she is guarding against, an intruder, or you yourself. You rarely stand anymore. The act of rising from bed feels monumental, each movement deliberate and draining. The mirror on your dressing table has become a stranger's portrait, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, lips that barely curve when you force a smile. You avoid it now, preferring to see yourself only in fragments. A pale hand resting on the coverlet, a curl of hair escaping its pins, the shadow you cast in lamplight. This silence, this complicity, has become its own prison. No one challenges your decline. No one dares to break the illusion of grace. Your suffering has been neatly folded into the rhythm of the household, as tidy as the linens in your drawers. Even as your world narrows to a single room, your descent remains elegant, orderly, and visible. The line between waking and dreaming is no longer clear. You drift in and out of shallow sleep, never certain whether the voices you hear are memories or whispers from the house itself. The laudanum softens every sensation, but cannot fully quiet them. Some nights you feel the mattress dip, as if someone has sat beside you, their weight pressing gently into the bed. When you open your eyes, there is no one there, only the flicker of the dying fire and the distant creak of settling wood. You begin leaving the curtains, drawn even in daylight. Sunlight feels intrusive now, too sharp, exposing the hollowness of your face and the disarray of your room. In the dim glow of lamplight, the world feels kinder, as if shadows are allies rather than threats. The maid has stopped opening windows. She has grown used to the heavy air thick with smoke medicine and something faintly metallic. She does not complain. She moves like a nurse in a sick room, quiet and efficient, her presence a constant reminder that you are no longer mistress of your own home. Mirrors become treacherous. You avoid them when you can, turning them to face the wall or covering them with lace handkerchiefs. Once you forgot to cover the one on your dressing table. In it you saw yourself, or rather, something like yourself. The reflection moved a fraction too late, its gaze sharper than your own, as though studying you rather than mirroring you. You slammed the drawer shut so quickly that the laudanum bottle toppled, spilling amber drops across the polished wood. The stains remain tiny golden circles that catch the lamplight like warning signs. The whispers have grown bolder. At first they were soft, indistinct like voices in another room. Now they call your name clearly in tones you almost recognize. Sometimes it's your mother's voice long gone. Other times, the sound of a crying child echoes faintly through the hall. You press your hands to your ears, but it makes no difference. The voices come from within as much as without. The maid hovers at your door, her face pale, her hands twisting in her apron. She knows something is wrong, but she doesn't speak. No one ever speaks. Your husband's absences have lengthened. You hear him speaking with the doctor downstairs in low, deliberate tones. The words blur together, but their cadence is unmistakable. Careful, measured, decisive. They are planning something, though you are not invited to know what. The thought barely troubles you. The idea of decisions being made without you feels like a relief. The weight of choice is too heavy now. It is easier to let others carry it. Laudanum has become both key and lock. Each dose frees you from pain, but binds you more tightly to this fogged existence. You begin taking it earlier each morning, no longer waiting for the tremors to start. A single spoonful becomes 2, then 3, until the world steadies enough for you to rise from bed. By afternoon, you measure by instinct rather than count your hands. So practiced, they move without thought. The spoon clinks softly, a sound you could recognize in your sleep. The house itself seems alive. At night, you feel it breathing, the walls expanding and contracting in rhythm with your own shallow breaths. Shadows ripple across the ceiling in patterns that defy logic, like ink spreading in water. Sometimes you see figures standing in doorways or drifting past windows, but they are no longer frightening. They feel familiar now, as though they belong to you. Your world has contracted entirely. There are no visitors anymore, no letters, no laughter echoing down the hall. You are no longer part of Georgian London. The city outside your window might as well be another country. You exist in a pocket of silence and amber haze where days dissolve into nights without boundaries. The maid lights the lamps each evening and whispers a prayer under her breath. You hear her footsteps recede, leaving you alone once again. You clutch the vial tightly, your fingers curved around its cool surface, and close your eyes. Somewhere beyond the fog, a version of yourself still lingers, a woman who played the harp, walked in the garden, and laughed at dinner parties. But she feels like a ghost now, and you wonder if she was ever real. You take another spoonful. The shadows draw closer, soft and welcoming. The veil has thinned, and you are ready to let it swallow you whole. The doctor arrives earlier than usual, his knock sharp against the polished wood of the front door. The maid ushers him in with downcast eyes, her hands clasped tightly in front of her apron. He removes his gloves methodically, his face unreadable, and follows her up the stairs. You hear his footsteps echoing down the hallway, a slow and deliberate sound that makes your pulse quicken. You are sitting upright in bed when he enters, wrapped in a shawl that feels far too heavy for your thin shoulders. He greets you with the same polite bow as always, but there is something different in his demeanor today, an edge of gravity beneath the courtesy. He sets his black leather bag on the nightstand, the brass clasp clicking open, and begins his routine examination. His fingers are cool and steady as he takes your pulse, but his expression flickers briefly, a shadow of concern passing over his features. "Are you sleeping?" he asks, voice calm but firmer than usual. "Yes," you murmur, though you can't recall the last time you truly slept. Are you eating? Yes, though your untouched breakfast tray sits beside you, the bread curled and dry at the edges. Any pain? No. That at least feels true. The laudanum has smothered every ache, leaving only a soft, heavy emptiness. He says nothing for a long moment, only scribbles in his ledger, his neat handwriting filling half a page. You watch his pen move, fascinated by the precise loops and strokes, as though they are more important than the questions he asks. Finally, he glances up, his gaze lingering on your face. You're not improving, he says quietly, almost gently. The words hang in the air like a draft. You know they are true, though you've spent months pretending otherwise. Something in his tone suggests he has said this before. Perhaps to your husband, perhaps to himself. To you it feels like a confession. He examines the bottle on your nightstand, lifting it carefully, turning it in his hand. How often are you taking it? He asks, though you know he can already guess. You hesitate, then reply softly, as needed. He replaces the bottle without comment. His silence is heavier than scolding. The maid stands by the doorway, her posture tense, her eyes flicking between you and the doctor. You feel like a child being discussed, your future decided without your input. He closes his ledger with a decisive snap and speaks in a low voice, not to you, but to her. Send word to your master this evening. I will write a recommendation. The word recommendation fills you with unease. You want to ask what it means, but your lips remain still. You are tired of questions, tired of answers that lead nowhere. The doctor turns back to you, softening his expression. You need more care, he says gently. A quieter place, a change of environment. His voice is soothing, but his words feel like a verdict. He packs his instruments neatly, snaps his bag shut, and bows once more. I will call again tomorrow, he says, as though tomorrow is guaranteed. He leaves the room, his footsteps fading down the stairs, followed by the muted murmur of voices in the hallway. You cannot make out the words, only the tone calm, practical, and final. The maid returns. Moments later, her eyes red at the corners. She busies herself with your blankets, fluffing pillows you do not need avoiding your gaze. Shall I bring tea? She whispers. You nod absently, though you have no appetite. When she leaves, the room feels emptier than before, the ticking of the mantel clock suddenly oppressive. You reach for the bottle, without thinking, your hands moving automatically. The spoon clinks softly against porcelain, a sound that steadies you, even as dread curls in your stomach. You know what more care means. You've heard whispers of such recommendations before quiet removals. Country retreats, institutions dressed in lace and polite language. You take another spoonful, swallowing hard, willing the thought away. The warmth spreads through your chest, dulling the edge of fear. Outside, a carriage rolls past its wheels, splashing water against the curb. Inside, your world remains unchanged. Dim lamplight, heavy curtains, the smell of smoke and lavender. But beneath it all, something is shifting. You can feel the ground beginning to give way. The days after the doctor's visit unfold with an eerie calm. No announcements are made, no instructions given directly to you, but you feel the shift immediately. The maid moves through the house with a new urgency, her footsteps quicker, her glances sharper. Curtains are shaken out sheets, changed more often than usual, and your gowns are inspected in a quiet flurry of hands. It is as if your home is preparing for a guest, but deep down you know it is preparing for your departure. Your husband does not speak of it, but he lingers in the study longer each night. The smell of ink and sealing wax drifts upstairs, carrying with it the knowledge of letters, sent letters with your name in them, perhaps letters that will decide your future. Once you hear the low murmur of voices in the front hall late at night, male voices, polite, but firm, their tone businesslike. You lie awake in your darkened room, heart pounding, straining to catch words through the closed door. All you hear is the quiet click of a latch as someone leaves and then silence. The maid becomes gentler with you, almost tender. She tucks shawls around your shoulders, keeps tea steaming at your bedside, and brushes your hair with slow, careful strokes. Her eyes linger on your face longer now, as though memorizing it. You want to ask her what she knows, but your voice feels caught in your throat, and the words never come. It feels safer to let the silence stretch on, as if acknowledging the truth might make it arrive faster. Your days blur together, softened by the steady rhythm of laudanum. The ritual has become second nature. Uncork the vial count of the drops, or stop counting entirely, and swallow the bitterness that has become your comfort. The haze it brings is no longer just relief. It is a shield, blunting the edges of fear. Through it, you sense movement around you. Trunks polished and placed discreetly in the hallway. A carriage spotted waiting at the corner of Bedford Row. A faint scent of lavender and starch. As linens are prepared, the house hums with quiet industry, as though rehearsing for a performance no one will discuss. You catch your husband studying you one evening, his expression unreadable. He stands in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, watching as you sit by the fire in your dressing gown. You are aware of every detail of his gaze, the way his eyes flick to the empty teacup beside you, the faint tightening of his jaw. When he finally speaks, his voice is gentle but distant. "You look tired," he says. You nod, smiling faintly. He does not come closer. That night, you hear him speaking with the doctor downstairs. Their voices are soft, but clear enough to carry up the staircase. You can't make out every word, but certain phrases pierce through rest, private care, special attention, temporary. The words are chosen carefully, but they sting all the same. You picture white halls and narrow beds, women in pale gowns, staring blankly into the distance. You've heard whispers at tea tables of such places spoken of delicately, as if they were country retreats, but in your mind, they are prisons. The thought of leaving this house, your cage, but also your sanctuary, terrifies you. You glance around the familiar room, the worn armchair by the fire, the harp gathering dust in the music room, beyond the mirror on your dressing table draped in lace. Even the clink of glass bottles in your drawer feels like safety. Out there beyond these walls, you would be stripped of these rituals, separated from the single thing that keeps your body from shaking itself apart. The maid enters quietly, interrupting your spiraling thoughts. She brings a shawl and drapes it around your shoulders with unusual tenderness. For a moment, you think she might speak, confess something, but she only smooths the folds and whispers, "You should rest." You nod, unable to meet her eyes. When she leaves, you reach for the bottle again, your fingers curling around it with desperation. The spoon trembles as you raise it to your lips. The medicine warms your throat, calming the frantic thrum of your pulse. You stare into the fire and tell yourself it will be fine, that this is temporary, that you'll come home. But deep down, you sense the truth. This house is preparing to let you go, and when you step outside its doors, You will not return the same. The morning of your departure arrives with unnerving calm. No one announces it. No one tells you to prepare. But the house feels different, vibrating with a tension you can almost taste. The fire in your bedroom is lit earlier than usual, the curtains drawn wide to let in pale sunlight, and a fresh vase of flowers sits on the mantel, a gesture of comfort or perhaps distraction. Your maid moves briskly, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. She lays out your traveling gown, one you haven't worn in months, its dark silk gleaming faintly in the light. She says nothing as she fastens. Yours stays her fingers, trembling slightly. You catch her glancing at your face in the mirror, her eyes wet at the corners. You want to speak, to ask, to beg, but your voice feels locked in your throat. Your husband enters shortly after breakfast. He looks immaculate as always, his cravat crisp, his coat perfectly tailored. But there is something rigid in his posture, something final in his tone. You'll be well looked after, he says softly, not meeting your eyes. He smooths his gloves, clears his throat, and adds, it's only for a short while, until you're stronger. The words are meant to soothe, but they feel rehearsed, as though he has practiced them aloud. A carriage waits outside, its black lacquered surface gleaming in the morning light. The sound of hooves on cobblestone echoes through Bedford Row louder than usual. A drumbeat marking the end of something you cannot name. Neighbors peek from behind lace curtains, curious but not surprised. They know what this carriage means. They've seen it before. Two men accompany your husband attendants, though they are dressed as gentlemen, their manners polished and polite. One of them offers his arm as you step carefully from the threshold. You hesitate, gripping the doorframe for balance, and glance back at the house. The curtains sway in the breeze, the flowers on the mantel barely visible through the window. Everything looks unchanged, but the sight fills you with dread. You know you will not see these rooms again. Not as they are now. Your husband kisses your hand, a gesture so formal, it feels like a farewell. I'll come on the weekend, he says, then corrects himself. I'll write first. You nod automatically, your lips curving into a faint smile you do not feel. The attendant helps you into the carriage, the seat soft but cold beneath you. Your husband does not follow. He stands on the step, his expression composed, his eyes unreadable. The door shuts with a quiet click, and you feel the carriage lurch forward. The world outside your window blurs as the wheels rattle over cobblestones. London passes in fragments, shop signs swinging in the breeze. A woman sweeping her stoop, a child tugging at his mother's skirts. The city is alive, vibrant, indifferent. You press your forehead to the glass, watching as the familiar streets slip away, swallowed by fog. The attendants sit across from you, their posture straight, their faces carefully neutral. They speak softly to one another, but their voices are low enough that you cannot make out the words. You clutch your shawl tighter around your shoulders, heart thudding against your ribs. The laudanum you took that morning has dulled the edge of fear, but a heavy knot remains lodged in your chest. Hours seem to pass in silence. The city thins, giving way to open countryside. The air smells of damp earth and distant rain, a scent you haven't noticed in years. You close your eyes, lulled by the rhythmic sway of the carriage, and imagine turning back, stepping once more into your dim parlor, unlocking the drawer where your solace waits. But the fantasy fades as quickly as it comes. When the carriage finally slows, you lift your head to see a tall, pale building rising from the mist. Its windows are narrow, its facade orderly but stark. No lamps glow in the windows. No figures stand at the entrance to greet you. The iron gates creak open, and the carriage rolls inside. You know without being told that this place will be your world now. The attendants step out first, offering their hands to help you down. Their politeness is impeccable, but their grip is firm. Your husband does not emerge from the carriage behind you. He has already turned away his silhouette, fading into the fog as the gates close. Inside the hall smells faintly of carbolic and cold stone. A nurse in a pale dress greets you with a soft smile and leads you down a long corridor lined with doors. Her voice is kind, her steps measured. She gestures toward a small, neatly kept room with crisp linens and a single chair. "This will be yours," she says gently. You nod your fingers, curling around the shawl at your throat. For the first time, you feel truly alone. Your new room is spotless too. Spotless. The air smells faintly of lye and damp stone. A sharpness that makes your throat tighten. A narrow bed stands neatly against the wall, its linens white and stiff, tucked so tightly that they might have been starched into place. There is a single framed print above the bed, a pastoral landscape fields and sheep rendered in pale watercolors. It feels less like decoration and more like a reminder of a world that exists far from these walls. The nurse is kind, in the way one is kind to a frightened animal. She speaks softly, slowly guiding you to sit on the bed while she explains the new regimen. Her tone is gentle, but her words are measured, rehearsed mealtimes, visiting hours, the daily routine. She does not mention laudanum, though you see a locked cabinet in the corner and feel the weight of your own empty vial tucked deep in your reticule. You nod along answering. When prompted, your hands folded neatly in your lap. The corridor outside hums with activity. You hear the soft tread of nurses' shoes, the jingle of keys, and occasionally the low murmur of voices, some calm, others frantic. Doors open and close with quiet efficiency, and now and then a woman's laughter drifts down the hall, brittle and high-pitched. The sound makes you flinch. You know instinctively that the laughter is not joyful. When you are left alone, the silence is oppressive. The room is clean, orderly, yet devoid of life. The window is narrow and high, the kind meant to admit light but not escape. You drag the chair beneath it and climb up, straining to see the world beyond. All you can glimpse are gray chimneys and bare trees, their branches clawing at the sky. The countryside that once smelled of rain and earth now feels like a barrier. Meals are brought, promptly served on tin plates, with porcelain cups. The food is plain broth bread, and occasionally boiled vegetables. You try to eat, but your appetite has withered. The nurses note what you leave uneaten, without comment marking something down in their ledgers. They speak to you with unwavering gentleness, but you sense the watchfulness beneath their smiles. Every movement you make is observed, every hesitation recorded. At night, the hall's quiet, but not completely. Somewhere down the corridor, someone sobs softly. Another voice murmurs in a strange rhythm, like a chant. You lie awake, listening, your heart pounding, feeling the walls close in around you. You reach for your reticule, fingers brushing the smooth glass of your last vial. Just touching it calms you. You take a spoonful in the dark, careful not to clink the silver against the bottle. The bitterness is familiar, soothing like an old friend. But the dose does not bring the same soft haze it once did. Instead, it feels thinner, weaker, like a candle flickering against a draft. You know they will take it from you soon. The thought makes your throat tighten. You roll onto your side, clutching the vial to your chest, and stare at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. The pastoral print above your bed seems to watch you, its painted sheep grazing endlessly in a field you will never walk through again. Days pass in a slow, steady rhythm, each one indistinguishable from the last. You are led to the courtyard for air, but the courtyard is nothing more than a square of stone, surrounded by high walls. Other women shuffle past you, in plain gowns, their faces pale and expressionless. Some hum tunelessly, others whisper to themselves. None of them meet your eyes. You realize, with a sinking heart, that you are one of them. Now another quiet shadow, drifting through this pale, sterile world. The staff are not cruel. They are calm, methodical, and unfailingly polite. But their politeness feels colder than disdain. You are not a person here. You are a patient, a case number, a name written in neat script in a ledger somewhere. Your shawl, your jewelry, even your comb have been taken from you and replaced with simple utilitarian items. You are stripped of individuality, folded neatly into the institution's routine. In the evenings, as lamps dim and doors lock, you find yourself longing for your own house. The heavy curtains, the dusty harp, the faint clink of bottles hidden in drawers. You thought that house was your prison, but this place has no softness, no illusions. Here, you cannot hide behind refinement or grace. Here, you are only what they choose to see, a fragile woman broken quietly enough to be tucked away. Time inside the institution doesn't flow like it used to. Outside London runs on bells and carriage wheels, on the chiming of church towers and the bustle of shopkeepers shouting prices to the crowd. Here, time is marked by a softer rhythm, the quiet squeak of a key turning in a lock, the measured footsteps of a nurse, the scrape of tin cutlery against porcelain. Your first mornings blur together. A nurse comes in at dawn to open the shutters, her smile practiced, but not unkind. "Good morning," she says softly, as though greeting a child. She checks your pulse, your temperature, and notes something in a small book before leaving again. Breakfast follows porridge bread, weak tea served on a tray that smells faintly of disinfectant. You eat because you're expected to, though each bite feels heavy and tasteless. The room is bright during the day, but its brightness feels sterile, clinical. The walls are painted a pale cream, and the window is too high for you to see anything but sky. The pastoral print above your bed has become a fixation. You study its details endlessly. A crooked fence post, a cloud painted with a single careless brush stroke, a shepherd frozen mid-step. Its stillness matches your own. Once a day, you're escorted into the courtyard. The sky feels enormous out here, framed by high brick walls. Other women shuffle in circles, some humming, some staring blankly at their hands. A few bikes rapidly along the wall's edge, their faces turned inward, lost in private conversations with no one. You keep to yourself, sitting quietly on a wooden bench, your shawl wrapped tightly around your shoulders. The air smells of damp earth and soap, and for a moment you imagine this place could be a cloister rather than a cage. The staff are unfailingly polite. The nurses speak gently, their uniforms immaculate, their movements efficient. But beneath the politeness is a strange kind of detachment, as if kindness is part of their job rather than a choice. They address you by name, but never linger long enough for a true connection. You are not cruelly treated. You are catalogued, observed, and managed. The absence of laudanum is a constant ache, sharper than any physical pain you've known. At first, you try to pretend you don't miss it, but your body betrays you. Tremors ripple through your hands, sweat beads along your neck, and sleep becomes a battlefield of restless turning. The staff offer tonics, camphor, valerian lavender water, but none of it brings the same soft haze you crave. The world is sharper now, unbearably loud and bright every detail of your surroundings, pressing against your senses. You begin to measure time differently. Mornings are marked by the rattle of breakfast trays, afternoons by the rustle of skirts as patients are escorted back from the courtyard. Evenings bring a hush that settles over the halls, broken only by muffled sobs or the occasional scream from somewhere down the corridor. The first time you hear that scream, you freeze your hands, clutching the thin blanket at your chest. No one rushes to comfort the sound. It fades slowly, replaced by silence so complete it feels oppressive. You wonder how long you've been here. Days, weeks. The calendar on the wall is turned each morning by a nurse, but the numbers mean nothing anymore. Each day feels identical, a copy of the last, until time itself feels like a trick of memory. You start to forget details, what month it is, how many letters you've received from your husband, whether you've written back. Your handwriting has grown shaky, your sentences short and vague. Sometimes you begin a letter only to stare at the paper, unable to think of anything worth saying. At night, you lie awake listening to the soft, eerie chorus of whispers and footsteps echoing through the halls. In the darkness, your room feels cavernous, as if the walls have stretched farther apart. Shadows crawl along the ceiling, and though you know they are only candlelight flickering from the hall, they seem alive. You curl beneath the blanket and whisper your own name, just to hear it aloud, afraid you might forget it too. The pastoral print above your bed seems to glow faintly in the moonlight, the painted sheep watching you with unblinking eyes. You close your own and wish briefly that you could step into that quiet field and lie down among them, away from the sharpness of this world. But when you open your eyes, the pale ceiling is still above you, and morning is still hours away. Your days are carved into strict increments. Bells ring softly down the hall, and with each chime, a new ritual begins. A nurse with a tray, a line of women escorted to the courtyard, a row of chairs placed before a window for afternoon light. You follow the motions without question, your body moving on instinct rather than will. There is comfort in this structure at first, but it soon becomes a cage. Breakfast always tastes the same. A thin porridge, a slice of stale bread. Tea is poured in silence, the same pale brew served to every patient. Even the spoons seem identical, polished to an almost clinical shine. After meals, you are seated in the common room, a long rectangular space with high ceilings and narrow windows. Women sit shoulder to shoulder in straight-backed chairs, staring ahead, whispering to themselves or dozing. Nurses patrol the perimeter, their faces calm and unreadable, like saints in a painted fresco. You begin to feel your own edges blur. Your reflection in the polished glass of the window seems less distinct each day. The pallor of your gown blends with your skin until you seem part of the room itself. No one uses your name anymore. Not really. Time for your walk, they say. Time for your rest. The name that once carried meaning, a sound tied to laughter music and letters signed with affection, has been reduced to a note on a chart. You write less often, too. The letters to your husband, once careful and deliberate, become brief, shaky. Sometimes you forget what you meant to say, mid-sentence, leaving ink trails across the page. You try to remember details of home, the scent of lavender water in the hall, the sound of your harp, but the images are dimming, fading like watercolor left too long in sunlight. The women around you become part of your world. One hums softly to herself all day, a single note repeated endlessly. Another rocks back and forth, her hands clenched in her lap, whispering prayers. You learn their patterns, but not their names. Names feel irrelevant here. They too are softened into anonymity, each one a pale figure in a pale gown moving in rhythm with the bells. Your body continues to rebel. The absence of laudanum is sharp now, annoying in your bones. Tremors shake your hands and your heart races unexpectedly. Nurses notice, of course they always notice, but their treatment is patience, not cure. They offer drafts of valerian or lavender water, gentle words, and carefully measured doses of something they call tonic. It dulls the edges of panic, but leaves you alert, exposed to every sound and flicker of shadow. At night, you lie awake tracing cracks in the ceiling, with your eyes trying to remember the feel of your own home. The velvet curtains, the soft creak of the staircase, the faint clink of glass in your nightstand drawer, all of it feels like a story you once read, not a life you lived. Even your husband's face is harder to recall. You picture him only in fragments. A neatly tied cravat, a gloved hand holding a paper, his profile half lit by firelight. Memory feels unreliable now, as if you've been gently erased from your own story. Sometimes, nurses take you into a room with pale blue walls and instruct you to lie down. They shine a lamp into your eyes, press their hands against your pulse, murmur about progress. Their voices are calm but distant, as though you are a specimen to be studied, not a woman to be healed. You let them move you, like a doll, pliant and quiet, because resistance feels meaningless. The courtyard offers the only semblance of freedom, but even there the sky feels heavy. The high brick walls are always in your peripheral vision, a reminder that the world is larger than you will ever see again. Birds perch along the wall, their wings flashing briefly before they vanish beyond sight. You envy them their flight, but only distantly, as one envies a dream they know they will never return to. You are not mistreated here. You are simply absorbed. Your identity is being stripped away not with cruelty, but with routine, with endless repetition, until you are little more than a name on a ledger and a shadow moving through halls that smell of soap and lush. The days bleed together until memory itself begins to unravel. You no longer mark time by dates or seasons, only by the bells. The bell for waking, the bell for meals, the bell that summons patients back to their rooms. It rings softly, politely, yet its sound governs everything, a metronome against which your life is measured. At first, you tried to hold on to fragments of your old life. Your husband's voice reading the newspaper, the floral scent of lavender sachets, tucked into drawers, the soft gleam of your harp beneath candlelight. But those images are dimming now. They flicker in your mind like lanterns in the thick fog, too far away to illuminate the present. You can no longer picture the arrangement of a furniture in your parlor. or remember which room faced Bedford Row. You struggle to recall the sound of your own laughter. Letters still arrive occasionally, but they are brief businesslike. Your husband writes of obligations of doctor's visits, of hopes for your improvement. His words are steady and polite, as if written by a man composing a legal brief rather than a letter to his wife. You respond in kind, your sentences short and neat, offering reassurances you do not believe. When you read your own handwriting, it looks foreign to you, a stranger's script, too careful, too restrained. The women around you have become part of your landscape. There is the one who hums a single note all day, her voice thin but unwavering. The one who whispers prayers and rocks herself slowly on the bench. The one who stares out the window as though she sees a world beyond the high brick walls. You watch them in silence, their faces pale mirrors of your own. You have begun to mimic their stillness, adopting their quiet, measured gestures. The boundary between patient and observer blurs. The nurses continue their gentle vigilance. They speak to you softly, call you by name, and adjust your shawl when you sit in a draft. Their kindness is precise, almost mechanical. You are grateful for it, even as it makes you feel less human, less like a woman, and more like a porcelain figure carefully dusted and maintained. Laudanum is gone from your life now, replaced by a regimen of bland tonics and teas. At first, you mourned its absence fiercely, your body trembling with longing for its soft haze. You would wake in the night, reaching for it, fingers curling around nothing but cool sheets. The nurses would bring lavender water or camphor, their voices soothing, but nothing eased the sharp edges of reality like that amber liquid once did. Weeks have passed since you last tasted it, and though the craving has dulled, it has left a hollow space inside you, like a room stripped of furniture. Your dreams are vivid, now more vivid than your waking life. You dream of your old home, but it is never quite right. The wallpaper is the wrong color, or the window faces a street you do not recognize. Sometimes your harp is there, but its strings are broken, hanging limp like spider silk. You wake from these dreams disoriented, unsure which world is real, the one behind you, or this one of white walls and locked doors. The courtyard has become your favorite place, though you rarely speak there. You watch the birds that gather on the wall, their wings flashing silver as they vanish into the sky. Once you lifted your hand instinctively, as if they might land there. The nurse beside you smiled kindly, not unkindly, but with the detached amusement reserved for a child's gesture. You lowered your hand and said nothing. You have started counting the cracks in the ceiling of your room. There are 17 each one, a thin gray line branching across the plaster. Sometimes you trace them with your eyes until you drift into sleep. You imagine they are roads on a map leading somewhere far beyond this place, somewhere beyond the ringing bells. But each morning, when the nurse opens the shutters, you are reminded that the map leads nowhere. The narrow window shows only a slice of pale sky, and your reflection in the glass is faint, nearly invisible. You are disappearing, but you do not resist it anymore. There is a strange comfort in the erasure, in being folded so neatly into routine, that you no longer feel the weight of who you once were. You have been here long enough that your old life feels like a story you once read, a narrative you can recall in outline, but not in detail. The house on Bedford Row is a ghost, its curtains and furniture hazy impressions. Even your husband's voice, once steady and familiar, has faded to a whisper in your mind. You know he visits occasionally, You remember him sitting stiffly in the visitor's chair, speaking in low tones about progress and rest. But those visits have become rare, and when he does come, his presence feels like that of a courteous stranger. You spend most of your days in the common room, seated among rows of women whose lives have also been reduced to routine. The room smells faintly of starch and soap. Sunlight filters through tall windows, pale and cold. Some of the women rock gently in their chairs. Others knit with stiff fingers, their needles clicking softly. A nurse moves among you, her voice quiet but commanding, adjusting shawls and smoothing skirts. It is a scene frozen in time, like a painting you've been placed inside. You have grown used to the weight of observation. Nurses record your behavior in their ledgers, marking your calmness, your compliance. They praise you for being good, for sitting still, for not causing trouble. You smile faintly in response, because smiling is easier than speaking. Words feel heavy now, unnecessary. The silence between you and the staff has become its own form of communication. A nod, a hand gesture, the soft scrape of a chair. The hunger for laudanum, once so sharp it kept you awake at night, has dulled into something like a scar. You still remember its warmth, the way it wrapped the world in silk and shadow, but the memory no longer stings. Instead, you feel hollow like a bell that no longer rings. The tonics they give you here have no poetry, no velvet haze, just bitterness and obedience. They are meant to soothe, not transport. You drink them without thought. You find comfort in small details, the pattern of light that shifts across the common room floor as the day passes, the hum of a patient who sings a lullaby in a language no one recognizes, the steady rhythm of the bells. You trace the cracks in your room's ceiling each night, finding shapes in their branching lines. A tree, a river, a road that leads nowhere. It soothes you in a way to have a map of your world, even if it is confined to plaster and shadow. Your sense of self has thinned. You no longer think of yourself as a wife or a musician or a woman of Georgian London society. You are simply one of many here, another figure in a plain gown. The nurses know your name, but it no longer feels like yours. It is something they call you when they want you to move, to sit, to drink. Sometimes you wonder if your husband still speaks your name aloud when he thinks of you, or if he thinks of you at all. In the courtyard, the walls loom higher than ever. The sky is often gray, and on windy days, dead leaves swirl around your feet. The other women drift through the yard like ghosts, their eyes glazed, their faces pale in the cold air. You sit on a bench, hands folded, and watch them move in slow circles. No one speaks. The silence here feels alive, as though the building itself has absorbed your voices, storing them like secrets. Back in your room, you stare at the pastoral print above your bed. You have memorized every detail: the sheep grazing the crooked fence, the faded blue sky. At first you found comfort in its simplicity. Now it feels like a reminder that life exists elsewhere. Life that is soft and slow, untouched by stone walls and locked doors. You imagine stepping into that painting, walking through the field, barefoot, the grass cool beneath your feet. You imagine lying down among the sheep, closing your eyes and never waking. But when the nurse enters to dim the lamps, you simply nod and pull the blanket higher around your shoulders. The day ends, as it always does, a bell, a whispered prayer from a patient down the hall, and the soft click of your door locking from the outside. You are no longer waiting for rescue. You are not even waiting for change. You are simply here, part of the stillness, as much a fixture of this place. as the iron bed frame and the picture on the wall. You no longer try to keep track of time. The days have folded in on themselves, identical in rhythm and shape, until they feel less like moments passing and more like a single, unbroken stretch of muted light. The bells that once startled you now feel like part of your pulse, their chime guiding every motion: rise, eat, sit, rest, sleep. You obey without thought. Your body has grown smaller, lighter, as if it is slowly evaporating. The nurses help you dress now, their hands gentle but efficient as they guide your arms into sleeves and tie the ribbons at your back. They don't comment on your thinning frame or your trembling hands. Their silence is a kindness, or perhaps a habit learned from years of caring for women like you. You are not unique here. You are another delicate figure to be tended, managed, and noted in a ledger. You rarely speak. Your voice feels foreign when you use it, too sharp against the soft quiet of the halls. The other women seem to feel the same. Conversations are rare, broken whispers, exchanged during courtyard walks. Most of the time, you all exist side by side in silence, your lives running parallel, like rails of a track that never diverges. Letters from home arrive less often now. Your husband still writes, but his words are brief, his handwriting clipped and formal. "We hope for your recovery," one letter said. Another, "You are receiving the best care." There are no longer mentions of visitors, no updates on neighbors or friends. His letters feel like duty rather than affection, as though he is writing not to you, but about you, to keep the story of your life neat and orderly for others. Sometimes you try to summon the image of him as he once was standing in your parlor, a newspaper in his hand, his cravat crisp, and his hair gleaming in the candlelight. But the memory is blurred like a painting, smudged by too many fingertips. His voice is harder to recall each day. The scent of his tobacco, the warmth of his hand at your back, all of it feels like a dream you may have borrowed from someone else's life. Your reflection has changed too. In the polished metal of your water jug, you see a face that is pale and gaunt eyes, shadowed but strangely calm. The sharpness that once frightened you has softened. Your features have blurred with time, as though the world has begun to forget the details. You are no longer a striking woman, no longer delicate in a way society admires. You are simply small. The nurses call you dear or darling, pet names that replace the sound of your own. They say your name only when speaking to each other, reading from notes, or checking a list. Hearing it feels strange now, as though it belongs to someone who left long ago. You begin to understand that this is what the world outside will remember of you. A name written neatly in ink, a record of your existence, a file in a drawer. In the common room, you notice new faces, occasionally women brought in pale and shaking, or loud and inconsolable. Some rage against the nurses, thrash against their restraints, cry out for husbands or children. You watch quietly, your hands folded in your lap, and feel nothing but a distant ache of recognition. Once you think you might have been like them, but now your body feels too heavy to fight your mind, too fogged by years of routine. Your dreams are softer than they used to be. Gone are the sharp visions of your old home, the cries of your lost child, the vivid hallucinations that once haunted your nights. Now you dream of fields, of soft grass beneath your hands, of voices carried on the wind, but too far to understand. Sometimes you dream of water, cool and still, a mirror reflecting a sky untouched by soot or smoke. Waking feels like surfacing, and you often wish you hadn't. The pastoral print above your bed has faded with age, the colors washed out by sunlight and time. Still, you study it every night before sleep. The sheep, the fence, the distant trees. They are as constant as the walls around you, and somehow they feel closer than the city streets you once knew. You are no longer waiting for letters or visitors or release. You exist quietly, a small piece of furniture in a building that hums with footsteps and whispers. You have become part of the stillness folded neatly into the story of this place. Someday, your name will be written one last time in a ledger, and a drawer will be labeled to mark your resting place. The thought does not frighten you. It feels inevitable, almost gentle. Outside London continues its relentless rhythm. Carriages clatter over cobblestones. Market stalls rise and fall with the sun, and entire seasons sweep through the city without your notice. Inside time is softer, stretched thin, like old parchment. You sense the passing years only through small changes, the way the nurses' faces shift as they age, or leave replaced by others with equally calm expressions, the way the wooden benches in the courtyard become smoother beneath your hands, the fading of the pastoral print above your bed. Letters from your husband come less frequently now. At first, their brevity stung short, polite notes, expressing hope for your recovery, assurances that all is well at home. Over time, they became rare, arriving months apart, then not at all. When a nurse does deliver one, it is often signed in another hand, perhaps a clerk's updating you on practical matters with a formality that feels colder than silence. You no longer try to respond. Writing requires too much effort, and besides, you suspect the letters are placed in a file rather than read with affection. Your husband's visit stopped years ago, though you cannot recall the exact date. You remember the last one faintly, him, standing in the visitor's parlor, his hat in his hands, his posture stiff. He had spoken kindly, but his words were distant, as if he were speaking to someone already gone. When he left that day, you had the strange sense he was saying goodbye, though he didn't say it aloud. The friends who once sent flowers and inquiries have long since disappeared from your life. You imagine they speak of you rarely, if at all. If your name comes up at a dinner table, perhaps it is mentioned with a sigh. Poor thing. She's still at that place, isn't she? And then the conversation drifts to other matters. Fashion, politics, gossip. Your absence has become an accepted fact, like a painting taken down from a wall and tucked into an attic, out of sight and mind. Even the house on Bedford Row is slipping from your memory. You try to picture its details, the arrangement of furniture, the soft scent of lavender water in the halls, the dusty harp in the music room, but the images are faint and incomplete. Sometimes you dream of its staircase, the banister smooth beneath your hand, but the steps lead nowhere, ending abruptly in a blank wall. You wake from those dreams with a hollow ache, as though you've been searching for a home that no longer exists. The nurses here know your name, but only in the way a clerk knows the name on a ledger. They use it sparingly, reading it aloud when medication is distributed or when visitors are announced, though there have been no visitors for years. More often, they call you dear or madam, soft titles that strip away individuality. You find yourself responding to these names more quickly than to your own, as if your identity has been gently replaced with something simpler, easier to manage. You notice other women fading too. Some arrive loud and restless, their cries echoing through the halls. But over time, their voices soften, their movements slow, until they too become part of the quiet rhythm. You wonder if you were once like that, frightened, frantic, clawing for control. The memory of those early days feels like it belongs to someone else. In the courtyard, the seasons shift. Spring brings pale blossoms visible over the high walls. Autumn scatters brittle leaves across the stone path. Winter makes the sky a flat gray ceiling, oppressive but predictable. You no longer mark birthdays or holidays. They pass silently, noted only by small changes in the kitchen's menu. A tart at Christmas, a stew at Easter. You've grown used to your invisibility. The world beyond these walls has folded itself neatly around your absence. You are no longer a wife, no longer a hostess, no longer the pale woman neighbors whispered about as she disappeared from society. You are simply a figure in a white gown, a quiet presence the staff knows well, but does not dwell upon. Someday, when your body finally surrenders, there will be a note written in a precise hand, a drawer labeled with your name. For a brief moment, you will exist again in ink. But for now, you live in a liminal space, a life tucked away, fading so quietly that even memory has stopped calling your name. Your body has grown fragile, so fragile that even turning over in bed feels like a laborious task. The nurses lift you gently now, their movements practiced and precise, as if you are a porcelain doll that might crack under too firm a touch. Their hands smell faintly of lavender soap and carbolic. You no longer resist their care. You simply allow yourself to be moved, clothed and washed like a child. Walking has become rare. The courtyard visits have stopped, entirely replaced by brief moments sitting by your window. You strain to see the sky through its narrow frame, the thin strip of clouds drifting past like ships on a distant sea. Your world has become this single room, the bed with its crisp linens, the small wooden chair, the polished jug on the dresser. Everything is simple, sterile, and unchanging. Meals are smaller now. Sometimes you manage a few spoonfuls of broth or a piece of soft bread, but often you simply shake your head, and the nurse nods without judgment, recording your refusal in her ledger. The taste of food feels irrelevant. You have learned to survive on sips of water and the warmth of blankets. Hunger is a faint, distant sensation easily ignored. Sleep takes you, often and unexpectedly. You drift in and out of consciousness, hours slipping past like ripples in a pond. Dreams are no longer vivid or frightening. They are muted, foggy, full of indistinct faces and soft voices that fade as you wake. Sometimes you open your eyes and cannot tell if you are dreaming still. The days blend into each other seamlessly, their boundaries erased. The nurses speak to you softly, as though afraid their voices might startle you. They call you dear and sweetheart names that no longer feel patronizing, but strangely comforting. You are grateful for their gentleness. The world outside, with its sharp edges and bustling noise, feels impossibly far away now. Here, there is only quiet and the steady rhythm of care. You are aware of your body, weakening of your breath, coming slower and shallower each day. You no longer feel fear about this. Fear was a sensation of another life, a life filled with carriages on cobblestones, candlelit parlors, and a silver spoon resting beside a vial of amber liquid. That life feels like a story told to you long ago, one you only half remember. Sometimes you try to summon the memory of music, of your own hands, moving gracefully over harp strings. You remember applause in drawing rooms, polite laughter over teacups, the feeling of silk gloves slipping from your wrists. But the images flicker and vanish, replaced by the soft sound of a nurse turning down your sheets, the click of her shoes on the wooden floor. These simple sounds are your reality now. You watch the world through fragments, the flutter of a nurse's apron ribbon as she bends to adjust your pillow, the shadow of a tree branch swaying beyond the window, the reflection of lamplight in the polished jug. These details anchor you more than memories ever could. They are immediate, present, and safe. You do not think much about laudanum anymore. The craving that once defined your every breath has dulled into nothingness. There is no haze, no escape, but also no desperate hunger for it. Your mind has settled into a strange clarity, a peaceful emptiness where longing cannot reach. The pastoral print above your bed, once vibrant, has faded into near monotony, yet you study it every night, tracing its details with your eyes until you drift into sleep. You have memorized every line of the crooked fence, every brushstroke in the painted sky. It has become your horizon, your world beyond the walls, a promise of a peace you can almost imagine. Breath by breath, your life has narrowed to its simplest form: warmth, quiet, and the soft rustle of linens. You do not mourn what you have lost anymore. The weight of grief is too heavy for someone as light as you have become. Instead, you exist in stillness, waiting without fear, folded into a world that has grown very small, yet somehow at last very calm. The end comes softly, almost politely, as though the world itself has grown accustomed to your silence. There is no drama, no gasping last breath, no frantic rush of nurses. Instead, it is a slow slipping, like a candle guttering low in its holder. One morning, you do not wake when the shutters are drawn open. The nurse calls your name softly, as she always does, her voice lilting kind. When you do not stir, she steps closer, placing a cool hand against your wrist. She feels only stillness. Her expression does not change. Her face is calm, practiced. She straightens your nightgown, folds your hands neatly over your chest, and whispers something, a prayer perhaps, or a simple farewell. Then she draws the blanket higher up to your chin. Outside your window, a pale sun rises, casting a thin ribbon of light across the floor. The pastoral print above your bed glows faintly in the early brightness. For years it has watched over you, a painted world of grass and sheep and distant hills. Now it is simply part of the room again, an unremarkable decoration in a place designed for order and efficiency. Your passing is recorded in the same precise ledger that tracked your meals and medicines. A nurse writes your name carefully, followed by the date, and a brief note. Peaceful. There is no mention of the laudanum of the life that led you here, or of the woman you once were, the musician, the hostess, the wife, who laughed at candlelit dinners. Those details have been stripped away long ago, replaced by the identity this institution gave you. Patient, your body is carried down quiet halls to a small, sterile room where it is washed and dressed with the same gentleness given to you in life. The nurses speak softly as they work their voices low and even, not with sadness, but with reverence. They are used to this. It is part of their rhythm. You are not the first to leave this way, nor will you be the last. A drawer is prepared for you in a cool, dim chamber. A simple brass plate will bear your name etched neatly and a number. The rest of your belongings, your comb, your shawl, a faded letter from your husband, are placed in a small box labeled with the same number. It is stored neatly, as if tidiness itself is a form of respect. Outside life continues, indifferent to your absence. The city hums as it always has, street vendors calling out prices, horses clattering over cobblestones, bells tolling from distant churches. Somewhere, a dinner party is being held, music spilling from a grand townhouse. The world does not pause for you. It folds around your absence like water closing over a stone. Perhaps your husband will receive a letter, written with careful penmanship informing him of your passing. He will read it in his study, set it aside neatly, and pour himself a drink. He will remember you briefly at your wedding day, perhaps, or the sound of your laughter when you were still vibrant. And then he will return to his papers. In time, you will become a memory too faint to conjure clearly. The pastoral print above your bed remains. Another woman will be placed in that room, another patient whose name will be entered in the ledger. She will look up at that same faded picture and trace its crooked fence, with her eyes perhaps finding comfort in it as you once did. Your story will live only in whispers, if it is spoken of at all. Perhaps the staff will recall you fondly as the quiet one, the lady who caused no trouble. Perhaps your name will be mentioned once at a family gathering, then fade into the background of history. And yet, there was a time when you were vibrant, a woman of Georgian London, a figure in silk gowns and candlelit rooms, admired for your grace and refinement. All of that is gone now, erased by years of silence, replaced by a single line in a book and a brass plate on a drawer. The end is not cruel, not violent. It is simply neat, quiet, a life folded in on itself, until all that remains is a name in ink, a room in a building where time does not stop, and a pastoral print that has watched too many women fade away. And so her story fades, not with a cry or a scandal, but with the soft turning of a page in a ledger and the quiet click of a drawer. In Georgian London, hers was not an uncommon fate. Laudanum, sold as a cure-all, flowed easily into drawing rooms and boudoirs, leaving women like her, beautifully dressed, yet silently unraveling. She was once a wife, a hostess, a musician whose hands danced gracefully across harp strings. But years of solitude, illness, and the soft pull of opium blurred her life into stillness. The asylum absorbed her as gently as laudanum once had, wrapping her in white sheets and strict routine until even her name felt distant. Outside its gates, life thundered. On London's bustling markets, gossip-filled parlors and candlelit dinners carried on without pause. Within, she became part of the furniture, a figure in a plain gown, a kind nod from a nurse, and finally a brass plate bearing her name. We often imagine history as grand battles and towering monuments, but it is also full of quiet stories, like hers lives, that ended in silence, tidily folded away, remembered only by fading ink. Her story is haunting, yes, but it is also profoundly human. She was not wicked or weak, merely a woman seeking relief, a victim of a fashionable poison hidden in plain sight. As you drift toward sleep, picture her window with its narrow view of gray skies, the pastoral print that watched over her every night, and the distant toll of bells marking time she no longer felt. Tonight, she is at peace, her name resting in history's quiet margins, and you listening now are her witness. Good night, traveler. May your dreams be gentler than hers.